And I think we've got everybody that we expect, so. Good morning. It's March 30th, 2022. This is the Professional Qualifications Committee meeting. I'm Charles Ward. I'm the chair. We'll start by calling to order a roll call. Brett Gladstone, our vice chair, is not here, so I will call the roll. I'm Charles Ward. I'm present. Brett Gladstone is absent. Tian Feng.
I'm here.
Eric Lum.
Present.
Barry Williams.
Present.
Okay, I can confirm that we have 4 members present, and so therefore we have a quorum. This meeting is being webcast pursuant to the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-122, dated January 5th, 2022. This meeting will be held by teleconference with no physical location. I'd like to remind the committee of our voting requirements today. All motions and seconds will be repeated for the record, and votes on all motions will be taken by roll call. At this time, I'd like to stop and ask for public comment.
This is the moderator. We are now open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take comments in the order that we have requests. People will be allotted 2 minutes to speak and given a 30-second warning. Seeing no requests for comments, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda, public comment on items not on the agenda. If any member of the public would like to address the committee at this time regarding items not on the agenda, members of the public are not required to identify themselves when providing comment to the committee. The committee may not discuss or act on any items raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to refer the item to the board's next strategic planning session or place the matter on agenda of a future meeting. We'll now go back to public comment, please.
All right, we have reopened for public comment.
Thank you. And as a reminder, this is public comment for items not on the agenda.
We have reopened for public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. We're going to take just a few moments now to see if we have requests for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like to close comments?
Yes, please. Thank you. We'll move to item number 4. We'll review and take possible action on our January the 25th, 2022 committee meeting minutes. I'd like to ask for public comment again.
We are once again open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. Let's take just a few moments now to see if we receive a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for comments, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. I have personally read the committee meeting minutes and I approve. I'd like to ask if there's any comment from the committee at this time. And if not, if we could have a motion to approve the January the 25th, 2022 minutes, please.
I so move.
Go ahead. Someone already started speaking.
Oh, I said I so move to have them approved.
I second.
Okay, we've got a first from Barry Williams and
Tian Feng second.
and a second from Tian Feng. At this time, we need to take a vote to approve the meeting minutes. I'll call the roll. I'm Charles Ward. I'm present and I approve of the meetings minutes. Brett Gladstone is absent. Tian Feng,
Yes.
Eric Lum,
Approved.
Barry Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. Meeting minutes have been approved. We'll now move on to agenda item number 5. We'll discuss possible action on the 2022-2024 strategic plan objective to collaborate with legal to implement Assembly Bill 1010, Chapter 176, 2021 stats, in developing regulations and aligning committee findings to provide more consistency and make continuing education requirements more relevant to current licensing requirements. Kimberly McDaniel will now give a presentation.
Hey, Sunny, it's Laura. I'm just going to interject and I'll do a brief intro and then we'll go to Kim as the members have more specific questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, please. Great.
Okay. So in the memo for this item for the members, we have the action requested. So we're really looking to talk about a few key items for this regulatory proposal. One is the definition of zero net carbon design, including carbon neutral high performance architecture. And then the providers, trainer, and educator qualifications and examples of zero net carbon design CE course topics. So in the attachment following the memo, we have a discussion of those terms and the definitions we have right now. And then following that, you can see the proposed text. And we have it highlighted in color to kind of correspond to the topics. The trainers and educators is in yellow, and the definition is in green. So, Sunny, maybe you can decide where you'd like to start in terms of, do you want to start with the definition of zero net carbon design and then go from there, or to, get feedback from the members today, and then staff can take that back and hopefully get this package ready to go to the board.
Got it. Yeah, got it. Okay, so just to confirm, Kimberly will respond to our discussion. Is that correct? Is that what you're telling me? That sounds pretty more realistic.
Package, and the one who's much more of an expert on it than I am.
Okay, so I have one question that we'll start with that I have for you, Laura, which is, let me get back to my outline here, because under defined key terms and concepts, focusing on 1, zero net carbon design, 2, carbon neutral high performance architecture. Number 2 is the item that I'm struggling to find in the definitions. Can you, I'm assuming that's been pulled out of either the regulatory text, or I'm trying to find where that's coming from. Number 2.
Sunny, if you go to the regulatory text, it's the yellow. I don't know if you can see color. It's the yellow.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's the yellow on the regulatory text.
Yeah.
And it's embedded in that definition.
So, Kim, what is it? I guess maybe why did we pull out carbon neutral high performance architecture as part of the definition?
I can explain. So I've been working on creating this draft proposed regulatory text, taking in feedback from some preliminary meetings that have been held with AIA, doing some research to look at what the Senate analysis and those types of things look like, as well as just delving into the research, the Architecture 3030, Cal Green standards. This particular definition represents kind of the research from all of those. And so this was probably something that came from some of our preliminary meetings, and it doesn't have to be in the definition. But I know that moving forward, part of the regulatory process, if we kept it in the definitions, that I would have to have a definition moving forward in our initial statement of reasons.
Great, thank you. Let's make this casual, guys. How would you best like to proceed? We could so we're on a sort of equal playing field and talking about the same thing. We could simply go through the discussion document sort of item by item, or we could sort of jump into individual sort of concerns, as each committee member sort of states sort of what their concerns are with the document at hand. Is there a preference from you all?
I'd like to at least get everybody on the same page by looking at the discussion document first.
Okay.
And when you look at the discussion document, which is attachment 1, you'll see that it starts with the dates. And so it's really important that we keep that in mind. So starting January of 2023, new renewals are going to need to comply with this particular requirement, even though we have until the following year to get the reg package done. That's really important to notice. We are really trying to get the reg package done well in advance of 2024.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that depending on how this conversation goes today, and the package that will be put together for the board meeting in what's the board meeting, May, that if we can expedite this process and have a package approved by the board in May, there'd be like a 45. We could even miss that board meeting and have one more board meeting and still meet the 45-day requirement for public discussion and have this sort of approved before January 1st, 2023. Is that correct?
That'd be really close. Putting it on the September agenda would be really challenging to have it ready for implementation in January.
The goal is May.
It's not impossible,
Right.
But it would be very
May.
challenging. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, understand. Thank you.
And we want to have the discussion, take the time that we need. We don't want, to feel like this got rushed in any way, but just be mindful of those dates. And we can only do the best that we can do, right? We want to be thoughtful about it as well. So if you move on to the next part, I just summarize some of the key requirements. It requires 5 hours of coursework on zero net carbon design to be presented by trainers or educators with knowledge and expertise in zero net carbon design. And then there's a requirement for audit records, which we're just going to carry over the language from our disability access CE, so that the audit requirements are identical to what's in the disability access CE. So that summarizes the requirements in statute. So if we just start with the very first thing on that list, which is trainers and educators, why don't we all take a minute to look at that definition and have that discussion?
If our moderator will give me screen share, I can, if it's not already with the moderator, this information, I can put this information on the screen for everyone, so we're all looking at the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We'll get it. Yeah, the moderator should have it. I think they're going to advance to that, so we can give it a second to catch up here.
All right. I have given Marcus control. Marcus, I believe you should be able to change the slides by going to the top center of your screen and see where it says sharing final AB board, change it to the other presentation.
Um,
Not that
Got
one.
it. Thank you.
Chair Wood, may I suggest, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For the benefit of two of our members who have not been a part of conversation, I don't know if Laura or myself can volunteer to walk through a little bit background of what the AB 1010, the history of it, and what is our PQC committee's finding. And then that might be lead to providing context for these two members to more meaningfully participate in the discussion.
Yeah.
So certainly we can go over this nice presentation as our work, and then someone can volunteer quickly go over the history of AB 1010. Laura, Chair, if you think it's okay to do this, and I prefer committee can do that, and either Laura and I can volunteer for AB 1010 walk through a little bit with our committee.
Yeah, Tian, I completely agree that we need both of those presentations. I just wonder if it might be better if we start with the task at hand first and work backwards. So, while everyone's listening to the history of AB 1010 and also the previous presentation, maybe it might be more meaningful. I'm okay doing it either way, honestly, but in jumping into the document that's been put together, I realize that might be more helpful. But if you would prefer to go back now to do the history part first, we can do that. I was going to work backwards though.
Okay, no, we can merge our approach. Since you have this project on the screen, and we can have very quick, let me just do a quick introduction because I was the chair for this committee. And so we have a history of this one, and you can present that one. And then we'll go back to AB 1010, do the same, if it's okay with you, Chair.
Sure.
Okay, so over the past 3 decades or so, we had 5 years requirement or 5 hours of requirement for accessibilities, and it's no longer meet the current practice, and we want to see what are the subjects that is continue to be or more relevant to today's practice. It was with that mission our PQC started this work 3 years ago to visiting all the issues that influence today's practice and come up with continual learning requirement to guiding our licensees and to really achieve minimum competency in handling modern day practice again. So the finding was documented here in this presentation through 1.5 years of work and a strategic plan that we formulated last year, the end of last year, incorporate these findings. So part of conversation today is, as we're looking at implementing AB 1010 and how this committee can guide the full board to integrate the effort from both ends, hopefully see some synergies, and by promoting some of education subjects that we can also align that effort, AB 1010 continuing education effort, with our PQC's finding. I hope I gave some background for our new members, and so with that, Chair, I think you can present the findings of our PQC's study and recommendations on continuing education requirements for the coming years.
Yeah, I think I actually meant the new document, but we'll go ahead and jump through this.
Sunny, it's Laura. I think they're going to load. We'll get to the document that Kim was referencing.
Okay.
So we can work through that. Is that what you're looking for?
That's what I'd like to do,
Yeah.
and then I'd like to come back to this. That's exactly right. I'd like to go through the new document, and then I think we can support it much better with the past work from the committee after we go through the document.
Okay. So I'll have it up in just a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep this one handy though, because we're going to need it.
Lots to talk about today.
I can also share my screen if that's easier. It probably looks better though.
Yeah, I'll defer to the moderator on that. I don't know if what would be easier.
This is the moderator. I have received a couple of new documents, which will be uploading momentarily. If you would like to share your screen, I can accommodate that as well. Your preference.
Yeah, I'm happy to, if you've got them and can put them up, I'm happy to do it that way, but I also have it ready to go if we want to just keep going here.
All right, bear with me. It'll probably be another 30 seconds to a minute.
Okay, we're patient.
Sunny, I will add just while we're waiting. So on the timeline for the regulations, even if we get into the May board meeting, we're definitely going to push this, as quickly as we can in terms of trying to get it implemented before the statutory deadline. Even if we aren't complete in the process by the time the new requirement takes effect next year, we will at least have the proposed language out there and available for licensees as a reference, so they would have an idea of how to comply.
Great. While we're talking about timing, can you remind me what time we have available for this meeting today, just so I can guide and pace?
We have it from 10 to 2 if you want to go that long.
Okay. All right. PQ. Okay, great. We're on screen here.
Another quick interruption.
Yes.
There were two documents, so you're going to see a visual interruption again.
Okay, no, that's fine. So here's the document that we're talking about. Let's start on let's go back a page.
All right, we're all set.
Okay, cool. So again, what we're being tasked to do is the AB 1010 has been passed, and we need to define essentially the coursework and the requirements and the regulations around this. And so that's why the document that Tian was just mentioning is going to be helpful, because PQC did a lot of work in sort of defining areas that we felt like architects in California we could do a better job with our CEs. And zero net carbon design, we felt like was aligning with, especially I believe, category 2 of that document. So I think if we just go through this today and the key terms and concepts, trainers and educators, zero net carbon design, I think one of the key things is going to be definitions. I think the trainers and education part, and if you guys have read through the information, for me, seems pretty straightforward. There might be a few sort of minor questions that I have about the descriptions of those people in this document as it pertains to this new ABT 1010 and also the old accessibility regulations that we have already, in fact, and if they are in fact in alignment. And then if we can scroll up just a little bit to the zero net carbon design, the green section here. I don't think maybe it scrolls in this presentation. That might be the problem.
This is the moderator. Let me try something. Marcus, I'm going to take control away from you for a second.
Okay.
Is that helpful? Has the view changed at all?
Now it's only showing page 1 of 2.
I can do it actually with my mouse. So I got it. There we go. Okay, somehow I have control of this. Okay, my apologies. It was my fault. Okay, so the zero net carbon design, architectural designs of new construction or the rehabilitation, reuse of an existing facility that produces on-site or procures from off-site enough carbon-free renewable energy to meet building operations energy consumption on an annual basis. I believe this is going to be like the heart of our conversation today, this particular part. And the CE topic examples, for me personally, I'm going to want to, based on whatever definition that we seem to be in agreement on today, the just sort of general consensus, I'd like to sort of test and brainstorm the types of classes and topics that we think would fall underneath that definition, and it would be so great if Kim could sort of validate if those topics could indeed be considered under that umbrella. Now, there's already a list of documents. Can we go to the next page? Did we go too far? I think we went too far. Do I have control of the pages?
This is the moderator. You do not have control of the pages at the moment.
Okay.
Marcus is in control.
Okay, so page 2. Okay, so there's the class. Okay, now we need to go to the next document. This part that I'm skipping over, I'm sorry, is the way that it coincides and is similar to, for implementation purposes, the accessibility requirements. So we just went over this, but I'll go over it again. Trainers or educators with knowledge and expertise in zero net carbon design means a person with a minimum of 5 recent projects or 3 years of direct experience in the designing and building of carbon neutral architecture and who meets one of the 3 additional requirements of subsection F. Zero net carbon design requirement means architectural designs of new construction and existing facilities that produce on-site or procures enough carbon-free renewable energy to meet building operations energy consumption annually. I believe at some point today, Tian has maybe some alternative definitions that he'd like to throw out there to us. So when we get to that point, we'll look at those definitions that he's been working on. This is essentially what we're being tasked to do, is to define zero net carbon design, and then deal with its implementation, the types of courses that this regulation would allow. I think it's like, if you guys were all at the last meeting, so if you remember, the conversation was about, I believe there was general agreement that there needed to be a sort of broad definition that would accept many types of courses and that would correlate with the work that the PCQ committee had done before. And so I think now is a good time to go back to Tian's, the PCQ presentation from before, and we'll look at what we looked at the last committee meeting. can we keep going?
Chair Wood, do you mind I interject?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. So I would ask, I think one member had early involvement with this document here, which is Barry, and I'm not sure Eric has any background. So Eric, you are welcome to ask us questions about both front that AB 1010 was actually initiated by AIA California and now become legislation. And this document was developed by this board and under the effort of this committee started 3 years ago. And hopefully at the end of today's conversation, we see some convergence here between the two initiatives and develop a regulatory document that is reflective of both effort and that is very helpful to practicing architects in California. So if two of you have any questions before we get into these detailed discussions, you're more than welcome or you're encouraged to ask questions or have a dialogue.
All right, thank you. I just have a spelling correction, I think. Under number 1, under trainers or educators, you have the word in the third line, demonstrable. I think you mean demonstrable there.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, can I just point out, now that you brought that up, I would like for us to, if we're going to keep that direct demonstrable experience, that we would need to, that's a term that we would need to come to some kind of consensus about what that means, or we can always remove that. But that came from some earlier discussions about just having people actually have the relevant experience.
No, I agree with that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So, Sunny, I think we can, is someone planning on go over this document? Is you or Laura? Or?
I can go over it, but I have a general question. Like, I want to make sure that we don't make this too complicated. So I think one of my first questions, before we get too far in depth going back over this for Kim is, you've seen this document that's on the screen and this category 2. Is there anything in this category 2 that you believe would not fall under a course or CE unit that would fulfill zero net carbon design as it's currently defined in your document?
I like your question, because the way that the definition has been defined in the proposed regulatory text accommodates these categories. And so when you look at the topics in the proposed regulatory text, you will see all of these categories that are from category 2.
Thank you. That's good news for me, and because these category 2 things, especially the last one, climate justice, is one of the things that's been most important to me that is included in these discussions. And so, based on that question, I'm wondering if the committee could ask similar questions, concerns, or for topics that maybe are not in category 2, but maybe even in some of our other categories from our previous PCQ work, to find out if those classes or areas of study could be included in this current definition. My concern is that if we further qualify the definition, that we could have the opposite effect of what we're trying to achieve in some of our conversations from the past. And so I just want to put that out front, that's my concern in a further qualification of this definition.
Sunny, this is Laura. If I can just add to what you're saying, I think you're right in that, like, I think we can broadly define zero net carbon design to include everything in category 2, as Kim has done. But if we try to, I think we'll have difficulty if we try to wrap in some of the other categories, because we're going to have a hard time justifying it as, under that definition. Would just be how I see it.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fair, and that's my understanding of it as well. I'm just wondering if there are some items in some of the other categories that previously slipped through the cracks and should have maybe been included in category 2. I guess that's where I was going. And wondering if the committee felt the same. I'm not sure. I read through it. I feel pretty comfortable with the definitions in category 2 personally, but I'm just throwing that out for discussion.
Can someone, sorry, I'm picky. Can someone remove your cursor away from the document? Yeah, that's good. The document is now unabstracted. I wonder if, first of all, it would be great if the entire category 2 can be understood and justified as meeting the intent of AB 1010. That would be ideal. But I also like to hear broad, perspective, such as people from public and from maybe a member of AI California. See if I saw a few of them actually attending now. Just wondering, Laura, procedure-wise, can we have intermittent exchange with our public members here, or we have to finish our discussion and then open for public comment?
I think you can defer to how the chair would like to run it. Typically you have the members complete their comments and then would open it for public comment. So you don't have to keep.
So how about we design this way? We chair, if you could entertain this, is we take this category 2 and we have a conversation on sustainability and resiliency and carbon free and climate justice. And from after each bullet point, we open for public comment. Can we do that?
We could certainly do that. What would your hope in that the public comments would expand each one of these categories further, or that
or they may intend to narrow than this? So we do not know, but since we have this form and we have good public attendance, I thought it would be beneficial as a working session.
Sure. If there's no current conversation within the committee, I'm 100%. I'm happy with the conversation about category 2, and if the rest of the committee is as well, we can certainly move to public comment.
Okay. So,
is that what you'd like to do? Are you guys all does anyone on the committee have any statements or communication regarding this conversation? If not, we can certainly. Barry.
Yeah, I just have one comment, and it probably goes with the carbon-free building design. And the one thing that I'm interested in, I'm not sure if it's covered here or not, is the idea of looking at embodied energy and materials in the construction of buildings. But we're kind of looking at the back end as to how the buildings perform, is my understanding anyway. But then there's also the embodied energy that goes into materials, and sometimes I see that really tweaked in a building that does real well in the end product, but used a lot of energy in the beginning. And I don't know if that's in this section or not, if that would be covered under that embodied energy.
This is Barry. This is a good comment. As a member of AIA's environmental committee as well myself, so we have been actually diligently working on enhanced definition, and we have, as Sunny mentioned, we are proposing some of enhancement to the definition, in which clearly includes the embodied carbon as a part of learning objective as a definition. So yeah, if all of us feel comfortable, the entire category 2 fits AB 1010 nicely, I think we can take the whole category 2 and then we open for public comment.
Okay, moderator. Let's open for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And we will call on people in the order we have requests for public comment. We have a request for comment from Glenn from AIA. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Glenn, we've sent you a request to unmute your microphone. Will you do a mic check with us, please? All right, we see that you are unmuted, but we have not heard from you yet. Try again. In the meantime, let's bring up an audio text slide on our main presentation. It's slide 16. All right, Glenn, hopefully this is helpful. We're going to give you a few moments to resolve your audio. If not, we may ask someone else to comment and circle back to you. Can we also have audio text slide 20, please? And we also have a request from Mitra. Let's give Mitra an opportunity to speak while Glenn tries to resolve audio problems. Mitra, we've sent you a request to unmute your microphone. Mitra, we're going to send you a second request to unmute your microphone. In the meantime, I will read what Mitra wrote. Mitra may not have the ability to speak to us. In the comments, it was written, based on the bullet items of Category 2, it would be more appropriate to title the Category 2 as Climate Action. All right. Mitra, feel free to let us know in the comments if that is sufficient or if you would like another opportunity to speak. Let's circle back to Glenn for just a moment. Glenn, we've given you another opportunity to unmute your microphone.
Hello, do you hear me?
Mitra, we hear you. I believe this is Mitra.
Okay, I was struggling with unmuting myself. I don't know what was going on.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I own my, hey there. I don't know if you see me, but no, I don't think you see me. Yeah, just maybe it's minor, but based on what I'm saying, the content under Category 2, which is titled as Climate Action, I'm seeing those more, I'm sorry, Climate Change. I'm seeing more of the title to be Climate Action rather than Change. That's my only comment. I think it's what was mentioned about material embodiment. I think it's pretty much included in the carbon-free building design. Maybe it can be elaborated a little bit further, but.
Mitra, this is Laura. If I could just interject, I think we can take in your comment that we received, but I think we do need to cut off public comment. Unfortunately, since you're not a member of the committee, we're not able to take additional comment from you on the items.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I I just wrote it. I didn't think I was going to be asked to comment verbal. I just wrote it in the comment section. So that was, I don't know. I understand that I shouldn't be commenting.
All right. Next, we have a request from Carrie. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Carrie, we've sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello.
Welcome. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I also, Carrie Bernstein, I'm an architect and member of AIA California and on the Resilient Design Committee with Tien. Also to not understate the value of embodied carbon, the journalist Richard Bernstein has done tremendous work in debunking some of the myths that certain net zero carbon projects have put forward. In particular, houses in remote locations sponsored by Harvard and also by Perkins and Will. And he also was very careful about looking at the actual tools, like there are different software tools that help you calculate, and that's a little much for to ask an individual architect for CES credit. But to build buildings in remote locations, which require tremendous transport disruption of the environment, of the existing environment, and others, must be figured into the calculations of the carbon content of the building. It's just as important as the building itself.
Thank you for your comment. What's the procedure here, Laura? You remind me as we go through each comment. Are we able to discuss topics, or do we wait until after public comment?
You mean discuss the comments that were received?
Yes.
Yeah, whatever the committee would like. You could close public comment if you want right now, and then return it to committee discussion, and then if you need to, can go back to public comment.
Okay. How does the committee prefer to address each? Close public comment after each comment and discuss, or to keep going through?
I suggest the committee members take notes and closing public comment, then we discuss amongst ourselves. But I would try to address during our conversation all the issues raised during the public comment period.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, great. Let's keep going in public comment.
Okay. Next, we have a request from Mark. Bear with us just a moment, Mark, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Mark, we see that you've unmuted. Go ahead and do a mic check for us, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the PQ Committee. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects, California. On the 4 bullet points that you're looking at, certainly the third one, carbon-free building design, that meets the intent of AB 1010 without a doubt. On resilience and adaptation, in conversations that we are having with Tien and others, or committee member Fang and others, there certainly are aspects of that we believe would meet the intent of AB 1010. There certainly would be room for that category to be included in acceptable subject matter. Climate justice, that's a little bit of a hard one. As important as it is, certainly a zero net carbon building does improve climate justice, but all of the aspects within climate justice may not be a part of zero net carbon design. But certainly, again, a clean building that is not emitting anything or is not reliant on a power plant that is emitting something located in a neighborhood that has a lot of sources of pollution, reducing the demand for those sources of energy that is polluting, that is certainly a climate justice issue. But I think all of climate justice issues, as important as they are, would not necessarily fall into the zero net carbon design subject matter. And sustainability, I believe some of that would be covered by zero net carbon design. I don't know if all of it is a zero net carbon design subject matter. Thank you.
All right, and Glenn has written to us and said, concern the strict definition of trainers and educators would exclude educators, regulators, and researchers not directly involved with designing and building. And that appears to be the entirety of our requests for comments at the moment.
Thank you, Mark Christian. And commentator, what was the name of our last comment?
Glenn.
Glenn.
Yes. A. Gall from AIA.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, it sounds like if everyone that's on the participant list has made comments, we can close public comment and come back to discussion.
Yeah, hi, this is Eric Lum. Can you clarify this, maybe going back to Tian's point about the history of this, whether all of Category 2 climate change or climate action, whatever you want to call it, is supposed to be embedded within AB 1010? Because currently the language of AB 1010 seems to be specifically about net zero design.
Great.
And it doesn't cover sustainability, doesn't cover resilience, does not cover climate justice.
That's right. This is a good time to stop and go back and give you the history. We talked a little bit about this the last time.
I'm sorry. Just procedure-wise, are we going to close public comment period or we start a discussion?
I thought I closed it, but if the moderator I didn't hear the moderator close it. So if the moderator needs to close it,
yeah, okay. The moderator announce it.
I will close public comment at this moment. I had left the Q&A box open in case you guys needed to reference some of the language, especially the written comment.
Great. I'll give you a background of how this came to be. The PQC committee started more than 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, even before my time, in looking at expanding the CE units required by California architects for when they reapply for updating their license every 2 years. Historically, as you know, there was a legislation as a result of some litigation that resulted in our current CE requirements for the ADA units, which is, I believe, is 5 units. And historically, that's been the only requirement for California architects and continuing education units. Our state has one of the fewest requirements in the country. So over time, the California Architects Board has considered increasing the amount of CE units, and they sent this to committee, and they worked on it, and they put together this great presentation on ways that we could increase the CE units. In fact, Marcus, if you still have control of this presentation, I think now's a good time to sort of fast forward or maybe backtrack to the beginning, and we'll go through it very quickly. So I can explain, what the outcome of that that research and work was by the committee. So we'll go through this. The idea was to expand the CE units, and so this is talking about what they wanted to do. You can go to the next slide. Keep going. Committee findings. So here, the idea was to increase the number of CEUs from 5, which is what our current ADA requirement is, to 10 to 15, which is in line with other states. I think we have one of the lowest in the country. as you can see here, we were using AIA as a framework for this, and expanding the requirements of the ADA requirements. Let's go to the next slide. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Okay, so the idea was that the PCQ recommended 12 CE units, and they broke it up into 4 categories. The first category, go to the next slide. I think each category was 3 units. So this was construction and evaluation. Category 2 was the one that we've been focusing on, which is climate change, or as Mitra persistently requests, climate action. I love that persistence. Category 3, universal design. So this would overlap with some of the existing ADA units that we have. And category 4, development and documentation. So a broad sort of increase in continuing education to, which makes sense, and most other jurisdictions do it. We don't. But of course, the AIA helps with these continuing education in their membership. So here's the outline. And so this work was going on at the same time that the AIA California got involved, and separately outside of the board, got a legislative sponsor to push through the legislation of zero net carbon design. And so they were happening parallel and simultaneously, and sort of not in concert and not in conversation, other than the committee members that sort of overlapped on the board and with AIA. So that's why there's no correlation whatsoever between AB 1010 and this document, which is category 2. We're bringing category 2 back up as a board and as a professional qualifications committee in an effort to expand a very narrow definition that we felt like was coming out of the AIA. And we felt like it was an opportunity, and our belief, not just an opportunity, but our belief that zero net carbon design was a much broader topic than some of the text that would lead to believe. And so that's where we are today. And I think at our last committee meeting, I actually appreciated Mark Christian's comment right then about it was nice to, for the first time, kind of get a sense for kind of where specifically the AIA is on some of these things. And it gives me also an opportunity to push back on some of the categories that I still feel like are very much involved with zero net carbon design. I'll talk also just for a minute, last year in 2021, 24 bills, architectural sustainability, climate bills were passed in the state of California. The one bill that did not, including AB 1010, the one bill that did not pass was zero net carbon design by 2050. We're one of, there's a handful of states that have passed this, and our state has not. And the reason is because of the controversies surrounding the implementation of zero net carbon design and various beliefs as to whether or not the carbon sequestration, I'm not sure that's a word, works. There's currently none of that technology that's in use in the state of California at this time. So we simply can't just completely rely on coursework that sort of offsets energy. I love the conversation about the embodied energy, because I completely agree. Like that should 100% be included in this, and we can ask Kim shortly if that if a course dealing with embodied energy would fall under this definition that's been put forward, and I believe that it would, but we can confirm that with her. But in response to the climate justice part, I very much think that climate justice is really broad topic in this, because it's not just like, especially with carbon credits, it's like those carbon credits have to come from somewhere. And whether that's coming from somewhere locally or coming from in the southern part of our globe, it's affecting people and communities, genders, ethnicities in a way that is not being thought about when the building itself is being designed. And so I think the climate justice category in some ways is one of the broadest categories in this topic, and I feel strongly about that. But anyway, I hope that gives you a little bit of background about how there were two different ideas and where we are now. So we're simply, because so much work went into the PCQ, this committee work into this summary draft CE framework, we've sort of been stalled with this work because we now have to implement AB 1010. So our focus is on AB 1010. We're required by law now to provide these 5 units, just like we are required by law to provide 5 ADA units. And then we'll have to pick up this work afterwards to fill in the gaps for an additional, like, if we want to move forward with 15 CE units for the state, we'll have to then pick and choose 5 units from these other 3 categories separately and work on that internally.
Okay, I think that's helpful. I'm just wondering how, and again, I'm sort of out of the loop on the entire exchanges, how Category 2 eventually turned into AB 1010, which seems to be focusing on just one of those 4 categories.
Yeah, so to be clear, Category 2 did not turn into AB 1010. They were completely separate, parallel conversations. AB 1010 was a bill sponsored by the AIA California with a legislator in the legislature. So they are completely separate conversations. We're simply bringing our work from Category 2 into this conversation as we try to define what coursework should apply to zero net carbon design. So it really doesn't apply directly to AB 1010 at all.
So it seems that both are originated with AIA California. So I'm kind of wondering.
No, the document that's on the screen, the Category 2, the PCQ work here, this originated from this committee. This was California Architects Board Professional Qualifications Committee work that was done. Now, some of the members, it's true, of the California Architects Board and of the Professional Qualifications Committee there was heavy crossover between the 2 organizations. So that is 100% true, and that's where it also gets very confusing. But these are meant to be 2 separate ideas and conversations, and now there's some cross-pollination that's happening.
Okay. I'm just wondering with Category 2, that seems to be the broader set of issues. So I'm wondering why those weren't embedded into AB 1010, because again, AB 1010 looks to be a specific subcredit of Category 2.
So, Sunny, this is Laura, if I might just interject. So I do think it's maybe a little bit confusing, and perhaps maybe we want to go back to having the regulatory text up on the screen at this point, because I think as Sunny mentioned, this document, this outline is something the PQ committee developed in the last couple of years, and it's maybe, for lack of a better term, it's kind of the board's desire of where they'd like to go eventually with continuing education. But AB 1010 was completely separate, and AIA California sponsored it, and it has a narrow focus on zero net carbon design. But AB 1010 didn't define the term zero net carbon design, and it's now the board's responsibility to define that term and define the parameters of the requirement that licensees complete this continuing education requirement. So I think that we used that work from the Professional Qualifications Committee in the subject area, as staff used that as part of the reference in developing this proposed language, along with other documents, the ones that are referenced in the legislative analyses of AB 1010 and those documents. So we kind of used all of that to come up with this proposed definition. So it was really just a way of informing the committee of kind of where some of this came from.
So
yeah, thank you for that. I think that's helpful and reminds us to stay on topic. And
excuse me, see if I could also interject. Eric, yeah, in an ideal situation, if we can see a bill is more like Category 2 and with the net zero carbon design as an element, and it is that concept actually was well embedded in this board and the PQC, but there are two separate organizations and each focus on what they think it is most relevant to their essential function of our job. So that's was the history part of it. But today, we are not going to dwell on history, and today is the opportunity that to understand the effort in a general direction, which is reduce the impact to the climate change and building our community and in such a way that we can be more sustainable. So in that big objective, we are on the same page. And taking advantage of this board has a role to defining in a legal definition for enforcing it. That's why today is an opportunity. And the definition that we're working together with AIA will help us to in the end to include how many topics, how broad the topics of category 2 can be interpreted or justified as meet the AB 1010 requirement. So I hope today's conversation is more on this one. How can we converge the two efforts at this point? And when we start implementation, and our outcome of the implementation reflects the objectives of both organizations and both documents. So it's kind of, more focus on today, less of history of it. So anyway, I hope that helps.
That's fine. I'm just trying to catch up to speed here. Just say something like resiliency, I think, is an important topic, but it's not really included in discussions about net zero. So if that's something we're interested in including, then that is a different topic. So
yeah, I don't know if we already closed the public comment. Laura and Sunny, if you think it's okay, I can share some of the latest conversation with AIA on the definition of net zero carbon with that definition can broadening the relationships with topics listed on category 2. So, which is, do I get okay? Looks like okay with
it's fine with me.
So the past few weeks of work, Eric, at AIA, particularly under their Resilient Design Committee, was look at the initial CAPS, our board's definition, which also derived from the collaboration with AIA originally. And we're expanding that definition, including 2 more aspects. And one is the embodied energy, and another is resilient design through increase the building performance, therefore can reduce the future rebuilding or repair or reconstruction of that building. So that can be measured by carbon footprint. So by expanding that definition, and as we said, most of our category 2 will be naturally relevant and included. And that language was drafted in a very early draft version. And Laura and Sunny and the board is willing to look into that with the staff and Kim, and hopefully we will reconcile what some of the concerns we have here.
Do you want to share any of that text?
We could, if.
Or or do you just want to discuss? Because I think your description of the text could suffice. I mean, I think that's right. It further sort of qualifies the definition. And I guess that's one of my comments about it. Does further qualification actually broaden the coursework, or does it constrict the coursework? And some of my fears in further qualification is that it actually has the opposite. It does the opposite. So I'm wondering if we could sort of flip the conversation about this a little bit and go through some of the public comments, and then go directly to Kim, and ask her, does the current language prevent any coursework about embodied energy in building design or resilient design and building performance? So that would just be kind of a direct question, kind of to piggyback on my first question that I had at the beginning of the day.
So I think it's helpful. We kind of, if we could take on some of the comments and give some of our thoughts. I noted the 4 comments from this exchange with public comment, maybe help us to get on to the common understanding a little bit more. The 2 main stakeholders really here is AI California and this board. So we are very close, and I think the dialogues only enhanced. Once we have a common understanding, I think it's only enhanced our rulemaking process, so we don't see contradictions or descendants, from a major organization. So with that said, I do have some response to some of the comments. Chair, if you think you can let me continue, I would. Otherwise, I'm more than welcome other people taking on the public comments.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so regarding the changing climate change to climate action, we definitely have no problem of it, but this is the document already produced. I don't think we can go back, retrofit the document. The essence is the same. The climate action is, by its words, it's action. And when we lay out our document, we said the subject areas. In other words, the practice subjects, project management, right, accessibility or universal design. So it is clear the climate change implies that the learning subjects that deal with climate change. So I think it's a good comment, but I don't see a need to go back to change our document. And number 2 is from Carrie and she very nicely illustrated some of the indirect, I call them indirect carbon footprint of a building process, the transportation of the building materials and all that. This could be a part of, I consider part of initial construction, and can be captured if you really look at the materials in embodied carbon, that the distance of transportation and the form of transportation can be calculated. And number 3 is from Mark, and how would the way to calculate in terms of trade-off or performance of carbon footprint when we talk about some subjects of climate justice. I think this is critical conversation should take place. And I hope we can arrive some of a common understanding if we are including this topic as a part of AB 1010. And we do need, Sunny, we do need have building some relations of the climate justice impacts the carbon footprint of our built environment, or vice versa. And then Glenn's comments is more about the trainers' qualifications and other things. I think we will visit during the next session. At the moment, we're really trying to building the consensus or synergies between the AB 1010 and category 2 of our work. So with that said, I want to reminding the public members and also committee members here, when we look at the carbon footprint, we really look at the 3 stage, in my view, of our building exercise. One is initial construction. Okay, everything involved that generates the carbon from the initial construction, including transport materials from remote areas and from more disadvantaged communities, you name it. So that is one. And 2 is the operating of a facility of built environment. That is another categories of carbon footprint we should look at it. And the third one, sometimes overlooked, that's expanded definition, Sunny, that AIA's committees continue working on in the past few days, was try to address that useful life span. When you build initial building construction, you have an option of incorporate higher performance features such as earthquake resistance. So your building will not quickly subject to rebuilding or repair or completed demolition and reconstruction. So however, your investment on the initial higher performance features may have its implication to the total carbon footprint of the useful life of a facility. So all these 3 elements should be considered, and so we can have more holistic view of how a built environment impacts the performance of the carbon footprint. So anyway, I hope these kind of discussion that between the 2 organizations and today will lead us to a good reconsideration of our definitions. So anyway,
Thank you, Tian.
That's what was my remarks.
Thank you.
I'd like to.
Barry, do you have any?
Yeah, just to make a few remarks, kind of going down the list of climate action. I think that's another way to look at it. I was also thinking climate change response, but I think they all kind of covered the same thing. I think for my clarity, I've already talked a little bit about, the embodied carbon, so I won't get into that. But I think my clarity then, or my question is more with Mark, and I think I got the clarity through years, Sonny kind of talking in the history of this, but it's my understanding that the board has the ability to add on different units as they feel they want to. Now, when the legislature comes forward with something like AB 1010, then we are required to act on that.
That's right.
Point. But
That's right.
we can, at the same time, we can add to that. And that's kind of what we're doing, I think, from what Mark might be saying, that we're adding these other categories, which I totally
can't necessarily add to it, I don't think, but we can certainly. It hasn't been defined. Yeah, well, it's our task to define what zero net carbon design is and what those, and so therefore what courses would apply to this law. I believe that's my understanding, Laura and Kim, correct?
Yeah, we can't add additional hours, but we have this requirement that needs to be defined.
We can't add hours, and we also can't add content, things that don't apply to zero net carbon design. Like it has to be in the direction of and under the umbrella of zero net carbon design. So anyway, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine. So, but the board could on its own add, if they wanted to. I mean, just say if the board had taken the action to do this outside of the AB 1010, that was still possible, right?
100%. And that was what I was getting to earlier. And that's why we keep bringing this document up from the past, because it was worked on, so much hard work was put into it. And I don't think the board's ready to put it to bed yet, but we're sort of where there's similarities and there's overlap, we'd like to take care of this category so that we can move on with the rest of the items at a future time, future hearing, future date.
Okay.
That's right.
No, I support all the items that are on, definitely.
So I don't know. I think this is a good time. I'd like to stop and sort of redirect to Kim a little bit if you're ready for some questions, Kim. I'd like to just ask, I keep looking back at the current proposed regulatory language, and I'm going through the public comments and some of Tian's comments and some of our committee's comments. And I'd just like to kind of go back to where I started the day, which is any of the coursework that's been discussed, embodied energy, embodied material design, resilient design, sustainable design, building performance, embodied energy in a building, sustainability, carbon footprint. Does any of those topics fall outside of the current definition in your mind?
I believe that the way the definition is currently written, it's more focused on the operational aspects, and that we would need to add some language around the embodied carbon concept.
Great. That is, so that gets to the heart of what Tian is discussing.
Mhm.
I think we are on the consensus, and with minor discussions happen to take place about environmental justice. I feel if this committee can, based on today's conversation, work with Kim, produce a recommendation, it is doable. We can have a good proposal for the board to vote on in May. And I feel encouraged to hear from the public comment. It's a nice discourse, but we don't seem to have any controversial issues. So I feel pretty good. And Chair, if you want to move on, and as a member, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I just have a few more questions before we move on. Getting back to the comments, I think the other comments that were worth responding to, either from our committee or from the public comments, I think maybe both, was in regards to trainers or educators. And so from an education standpoint, I just keep thinking about the types of classes that, the architects would be interested in, and also the types of classes, we are a consumer affairs agency after all. And so the types of classes that would benefit the public good. And obviously, the very nature of this would benefit the public good. But when it comes to the educators, I'm just thinking there are, let me get some terminology here. Organizations that, environmental organizations, social responsibility organizations, that very much have opinion about zero net carbon, especially in offset, how the energy port, not the construction part, but the energy portion of this, they very much would be concerned about how those aspects are implemented. Like, is there any, would those types of organizations who deal with this directly as part of their sort of non-governmental organizations, would they be able to teach classes and coursework as it pertains to this topic?
I hope, I know it's a staff answer, but I'd like to jump in. I hope we are not regulating in terms of educators or trainers organization he or she was employed. And I think that's less relevant than that the individual has the expertise or not defined here. Whether they work is not that important.
It's just that in the description of what qualifies the trainers and educators. I guess my initial reading was that I thought maybe it very clearly sort of sets out like people who are related to the construction field qualify, but it doesn't. It seems to disqualify non-construction related. And maybe I'm wrong, but
No, you're right, Sunny. I want to jump in.
Yeah.
You are talking about the regulatory language for the continuing education we are developing for either accessibility or net zero carbon. I think that document, it's not today's subject, but that document really need to be continued worked on. Laura, I hope I'm not making trouble by saying that, but today's document is only 3 pages, right? The one that we just talked about. The trained definition is very broad, the person who has expertise.
So I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what you're saying we still need to work on. As part of this regulatory language?
No, look at the previous document. There's a 3-page document. Is that the document we're working on today? This is not part of, this is much detail. Huh?
This is part of today's document.
Yeah, this is the proposed regulatory language that's being displayed right now. This is what we're working on. The first one that was displayed was kind of a comparison and kind of highlighting the key elements of AB 1010 that we need to include into the language, but this is the language itself.
Okay, this is middle page. It does actually F showing that, all right.
We need to move on the screen to the yellow text, the yellow highlighted text, which corresponds to the provider requirements. So whoever has control, can you scroll to item F?
I see it on my screen, Kim. Are you able to see it on yours?
I think everyone can scroll down on their own.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know. Okay, all right.
That's what confused me earlier as well.
Fancy. Okay, if we all scroll down to the yellow highlighted text that starts at F.
Oh, okay.
There's the proposed regulatory text that we should consider today.
So looks like we're now moving to, if we talk about this, we're really moving to the next phase, which is the beyond the education topic. We're done with that. And this is the provider's qualification.
I would be interested in adding some, a category here where it seems tricky, but that staff has the ability, a provider submits their qualifications and architects board staff. This doesn't seem broad enough to me, I guess, for this particular category.
Yeah.
And honestly, even when I go back and think about ADA requirements, I feel like this also, it may be one of the problems with our current ADA classwork is that it's too constricted to, code works instead of sort of broader social implications of these topics. And that's the trouble that I'm having with it. And I never really realized what the rub with me with our ADA requirements were until I got into this and realized this is such a much more broad topic. And it just feels like this is too narrow of course providers. Like there's so many opinions and this is such a big field. It feels like there's some voices that would be heavily shut out of this discussion.
Totally. That seems very specific. I don't know. So that class can be taught by so many professionals, anywhere from scientists to as you mentioned, as NGOs, leaders who really address some of the interesting issues on the more broader concerns of the built environment's impact. So I don't know, are we able to actually list in such a specific way that can be very inclusive of the trainers, has the expertise. Can we even list so many of different categories if we are going to list them, or are we going to or maybe a different approach is we don't list any of those?
This is Laura, if I can maybe interject. I'm not quite sure I understand maybe what the committee thinks is deficient in the language. So, Tian, I think we need to list something, because licensees need to use this language in order to know what classes they can take in order to comply with the requirement. But Sunny, I understand your concern, thinking maybe it's not broad enough. But is there a category you want to add to it? And it goes on to the next page, which I don't think people can scroll to, but there's a couple more if people can just look on their own. But maybe what is it we're missing?
I go back to it is a tough one, and I think at least there's the educator part, because there's a broad diverse group of educators in the state at universities that hopefully have broad opinions about this topic. But that's the concern, I think. I think for me, I'd like to hear from, especially from the social justice perspective, like you should be able to take a course on the drawbacks of carbon sequestration and its effects on poor rural countries and economies. And I think that could certainly be covered by a professor or someone with an educator, but it might be a much more interesting topic from someone from an environmental agency.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I think we can take that feedback and staff can work on it and see if there's a way to revise it to make it a little bit more broad. So it's not, it's sort of covered under the faculty appointment, but perhaps it's the way we've defined what they're teaching. We need to take a look at that to see if there's a way to broaden it.
Do we have to, Laura, put this trainer's qualification in this document, in this level of detail? Is it possible this document has a high level requirement, only spoke so the person has so many years of expertise on this subject, and then we have another document which is more detailed like this, can be shared by this committee, this subject, and also accessibility? I thought you and I want to visit that together, so we have a one consistent kind of provider's qualification requirement between the two subjects.
We can create that kind of document when we're done, but the regulatory text itself needs to be sort of self-explanatory. We can't go beyond that text.
I guess the problem that's sort of interesting, and to compare it to ADA, is that ADA has very clear and defined guidelines, right? That we can all accept and agree. And in this topic is like wildly controversial, like whether you want to admit it or not. Like the 10 people on screen have wildly different ideas about what net zero carbon means. And even a definition doesn't fix that, because it's not there's not a definitive outcome. There's not a distance. There's not like there's not a 36-inch distance that you can teach people. These are concepts, not specifics. And so that's why that's the rub for me, is just academically the discourse is stifled a little bit by the same requirements that work much better for the ADA requirements.
So
it's
Laura,
definitely a challenge.
The challenge is the more you list, if Sunny, let's say Sunny preferred more exhaustive list, more you list, more you exclude in general, because the industry is so broad. And unless you do a mathematically survey the entire industry, so it is less listed, perhaps more open. So I don't know what is the actual rulemaking requirement, how specific we need to get to, and maybe that is something of our legal counsel can advise. But I think I have reservations of keep listing who qualifies to do that. And for anyone who are not listed, become immediately not qualified to do it. And I don't know if we can easily to have such, even you capture this today, I don't know if it reflects our practice 3 years from today. So
I'm also sensitive to the fact that Laura and her staff have to enforce this, and that it has to have teeth, and that we don't want to create like a bureaucratic, sort of paper, like some, process where people have to be approved, I mean, because that's not how it currently works, and we don't currently have the staff to do that. So I get that it's a delicate balancing act. I totally get that. And I guess that also goes back to my definition of zero net carbon. I'm wondering if the definition could be simplified instead of further qualified, and that's actually the answer, is instead of further qualifying the definition, that we simply simplify it and broaden it a bit, which will allow this discourse that I'm talking about to be more broad and flexible and more diverse and less controversial. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be like what I'd like to see happen.
Yeah, that's definitely one approach. If we keep the definition a bit more broad, it might make it easier.
Chair, do you think we have a time open up the floor for public comment again? And I see good resources from our public members. Maybe you'll open a few minutes. I don't know if you. Yeah, no, I'm great with that. I personally need just a 5-minute personal break. I don't know if it's okay to do that now, or if you want to wait a few minutes, but
whenever you like.
Yeah, I need a break too.
I could use it. So let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back.
Okay.
Laura, while we're waiting, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to approve anything, right? Before.
Right. I just sent you a message. I think maybe, I think we've taken all the comments. I think we've heard some really great discussion today. And then staff can take it all in, kind of make some revisions to the text, and Sunny maybe work with you before we send it back or send it to the board in May. If we're able to do that.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. If Tian's comfortable with that, and then I'd like to just give Eric and Barry any other opportunity. And Tian, if you do think there's someone that would like to comment again publicly, we can do that as well quickly before we move on. But I'd like to just give the committee one more chance before we move on.
I also want the attending public know is this is a really good opportunity for you to speak up and share your view, and the staff prefer and board members as much input as possible, because there's a process we have to go through. So anyway, and Laura, this is good. We just need to take in as much as possible, and then staff will summarize them and produce a package for the board. Okay. So
yeah,
you want to open? Oh, go ahead. The board member
just a comment and relating to Sunny's comment on his observations with the current continuing education requirements for ADA, in that it is pretty specific and fairly technical, based around regulations. And it seems that the current wording for AB 1010 is similar in that it is pretty focused on carbon-free renewable energy to meet building operation energy consumption. So it's a fairly technical definition, whereas when we go on further, it does talk about and include other topics like environmental resilience, sustainability, climate justice, and so on. And so it's more of an observation that if the educational requirement is specifically about zero net carbon, it sounds like a very technical kind of education.
Thank you. Barry, you okay?
I'm good. Yeah, I don't know. There's some noise outside. I think that keeps making my thing come on here.
We're good. Okay, so I'll stop and pause, and we can open up one last time for public comment before we move on.
We are now open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will take requests for comments in the order that they are received. And we already have a request from Mark Christian from AIA. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Just a reminder for attending public, the session we will talk about is the qualification of trainer.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects, California. Just a brief comment on, I lost my part, the paragraph that describes the qualifications of the instructor having to be a licensed or registered professional. It mentions professional, civil, or structural engineer, so it's specifying those. It does not mention mechanical engineer. Perhaps mechanical engineer falls under the definition of professional engineer. If it does not, that should be specified as well. We just want to make sure that a mechanical engineer, a very relevant professional to zero net carbon design, should be included or not excluded by mistake. And a question, if I may, is this the last opportunity to comment on these regulations, or will there be an opportunity? Am I commenting only on this part of the package?
So, Mark, this is Laura. This is still just so once it's, it'll have to go to the board at a public meeting, so you'd have the opportunity to comment there. And then once we begin the rulemaking process, there's a 45-day public comment period within that. And then anytime it comes back to the board for any action, it would also be open for public comment.
May I offer a comment on, I believe it is paragraph E, or is that not the appropriate time?
30 seconds.
I won't be able to do this in 30 seconds, but I believe it's an important comment, so I defer to the chairman of the committee.
We'll accept the comment now, yes.
Thank you very much. On paragraph E, this is the paragraph that deals with the summative assessment and the pass rate. If I may just refer to it in my comments as the course standards. And by course standards, just to be clear, I'm not talking about course topic or the number of hours an architect has to take within a certain period of time. There is a national standard for mandatory continuing education for architects, education they must take in order to renew a license. This standard is accepted by all jurisdictions, all states and regions of the US with mandatory continuing education. It's a standard that is used by NCARB, and that is the AIA standard. And we believe there's a benefit of having a single standard on the course, the standards of the course. This proposal does not follow that standard. It right now under the AIA standard, the only time a summative assessment is necessary, is required, if it's an on-demand online course. One does not have to take such an assessment when it's a live in-person course or live online course. Additionally, AI standard is a 70% pass rate. This is a proposed 80% pass rate. We believe by not following the AIA standard, which again is accepted in every state, NCARB uses it. This will be the first time that the AI standard is not followed. We believe this will be disruptive, will be unnecessarily complicated, and we strongly recommend that this committee and the CEB consider changing this language to follow the AIA standard as every other state, every other U.S. region does. Thank you.
All right, next we have Glenn from AIA, who wrote his comment and said, designing and building is the problematic term. This should be looked into terms beyond traditional practice. Manufacturers, products, reps, city planners have greatly expanded my professional knowledge. The implications of Z&C design on standards development, yet they would appear to be excluded from being acknowledged as a valid provider. And that appears to be the entirety of our comments.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Mark Christian. I appreciate your time. I'll just state, Glenn, yeah, this is definitely one of the concerns that I have, but I understand the trickiness, so we'll be discussing this internally to see if there's any ability to open this up more. And Mark, this is, I've spoken with you personally offline about this, so I understand the AIA's concern, and I understand you've spoken with other members of the board, and it's certainly something that we're researching and trying to figure out. And so we hope to have more information for the full board at our next board meeting, along with this other information. So thank you for your comment. Okay, at this time, I think I will move beyond topic number 5. We're not going to take any motions for this for the topic, but we'll take all the comments into consideration for a presentation to the full board meeting in May. I'll stop just because it's 11:55, and I think, unless we need to break for a lunch, we could keep going if you guys wanted to push through, or we could take a I don't know, 20 to 30 minute lunch break. I will kind of leave it up to the general consensus for everybody online. I don't want to push too hard if you'd like to stop, but I think we could get through in an hour on this next topic or less, but it is also could turn into a bigger conversation, so I want to acknowledge that.
So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This is the moderator. My apologies for interruption. As you were ending comments, Glenn from AIA said that he wished to make an additional comment, and looks like he's looking for a voice comment. Would you entertain that?
You should be able to, and David, we can always announce when we close public comments, so Chair can resume his remarks.
Sure, I see his comment, and I don't know the answer to that, but we'll take that into consideration with staff, and we'll definitely it's a good point, and we should know the answer as far as our providers are concerned. So thank you for the comment, Glenn. Getting back to you guys, do you want a lunch or do you want to keep going?
A short break, no more than 20 minutes, my suggestion.
Okay, I'm good with that. Is everybody else good with 20-minute break?
I'm fine with that, no problem. Oops.
Okay. All right. Let's grab a quick bite to eat, and it's 11:57, so I'll see you guys at 12:20.
That's good.
Or shortly before. The next topic. Welcome back, everybody. It's our final topic. We'll discuss and have possible action on the 2022-2024 strategic plan objective to amend existing regulations to revise and expand the types of degrees accepted for licensure to remove barriers to licensure. This regulatory proposal would allow increased training experience and expand opportunities for candidates without a professional degree in architecture. It would align training and education experience earned with contemporary professional practices and trends. It would permit candidates to earn training experience from related professions prior to achieving architect registration, examination, testing eligibility. It updates references to National Council of Architectural Registration Board's programs. It removes obsolete and redundant language, and it simplifies the table of equivalence. I have on my list that Marcus is going to do a presentation. Are we going to do that now, or do we want to talk about this and move on?
Sunny, this is Laura. I think Marcus can run through it in more detail if you'd like, or you can, if members are prepared, can go into discussion, however you prefer.
Yeah, so I think my question just for the screen, so we're all talking about the same thing. In the packet, there are the two tables. Let me get on my screen so I make sure I reference them the same way. I just want to understand the two tables. There's the two tables, proposed regulatory language, Article 3. Is one the proposed table, and then the other one is shows
Can you
the
attachment one, please? Thanks.
Sunny, I don't. Laura, is Marcus or someone ready to give an overview?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Sunny, if you don't mind,
No, not at all, Marcus. What I'd love for you to just start with is these two tables are the same. One just shows the changes, and the one is the updated language. Correct?
Correct. So the clean language, and Colleen, can you do attachment 2? So this is what the existing regulation looks like with all of the amendments. So it's kind of really messy because there's a lot of changes that are being suggested. So the one with the clean view would show you what it looks like after it's been accepted. That's what we hope the regulation would look like. But there are some decisions that we're seeking from the committee on a couple of items. One of those items would be related to qualifying foreign countries. The term qualifying foreign country goes back to like the early aughts, and that was based upon an NCARB document that had reviewed, I think at the time, 180 countries and their licensing requirements. And there were countries that were similar to us in the licensing requirements, and that's how we have the qualifying foreign countries. And we actually have that not in the packet, but it's on our website, and it lists the countries that were based on that document. However, in the 20 plus years since, that document is gone out of print, and NCARB has taken an entirely different direction. Right now, NCARB has, they allow 1 year of work experience at 100% time. That's the limit that they allow. And what we're seeking from the committee is a decision on whether they want to pursue one of a couple of paths. One path would be to have a fixed limit on the amount of experience that can be granted. So say, like similar to NCARB, 1 year, and then decide whether they want that to be at 50% or 100%. 50% would be, they'd have to work. They would only get for 1 year, they'd only get the 6 months. And 100%, they'd get the full 1 year. Another option that we're providing is to just accept any amount of foreign experience, regardless of the country, and give it 50%. And then, of course, the other option that I mentioned first was to basically match NCARB, do a 1 year max on foreign experience. So if the committee wants to discuss that at this point, or I can go ahead and mention some of the other items, I leave that up to you.
Just for reference on that, if we go through this, if we go through the document that's on the screen, I actually prefer scrolling through this one first because it shows us the changes. If we scroll through this together, will we get to the item that you were just mentioning, the foreign country item?
Yes.
Okay. I'd love to do that, just so that if anybody sees anything that pops out to them as a red flag, they can comment and ask a question. You can go over the other ones as we get to them. I don't know who scrolls to the next page, but
the co-moderators.
There we go. Okay.
On there.
This is David. Just yell at me whenever you need me to change the page. I will do the best I can.
Okay, thank you. Sunny, did you want to go through page by page? Just to make sure I have that right.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand this 5 year to 3.5. I think it makes sense, but the thing that I'm struggling with is on the next page, there's an equivalency 3.5 here to a I think on the next page it's, let's see. So again, the one above is 4 year. The one below, I think in the language up above, it talks about this first 4 year program as being an accredited program, and then right below it, there's a non-accredited 4 year program, and they're both being extended to 3.5. And I'm wondering why the accreditation doesn't bump one up to full 4 years.
Sunny, can I suggest maybe let Marcus drive every page? And anyone has any questions, just stop. Otherwise, Marcus, maybe you highlight on each page you feel is necessary, reminding us what to look at.
Okay, sure, I can do that. But to answer Sunny's question, so the first column B, that's relating to individuals who were exempt from the AXP requirement that began in 2005. And the two columns, B and C, deal with education and training separately. In the case of the last column, column D, that's for everyone after January 1, 2005. But what we've done is we're proposing to streamline it into one. So the 4 year degree in architecture, I think the one you're referring to is A3A, 4 year degree in architecture or the units towards such a degree where it had 5 years and now is 3.5. Is that the one that you're talking about? Sure.
I think it might reveal itself on the next page, or when we finish this first pass through and go to the clean copy. But when my previous reading of this, there was this first two, to compare the first two, a 5 year accredited program is 5 years. A 5 year non-accredited program is 4 years. So then the next two items are a 4 year accredited program versus a 4 year non-accredited program. And my recollection from the clean copy is that they both translated to 3.5 years. And so I was just wondering why they were the same. I may be recalling that incorrectly, but that was my recollection. There we go. Yeah. So can you explain why those two 4-year programs, one accredited, one not, both translate to 3.5 years? Am I misunderstanding?
It has been difficult to follow the page. I don't know if it's a page corresponding to what Sunny was talking about.
So Tian, you can scroll down on these pages yourself. And so at the bottom of this page, there's a 4-year degree in architecture.
Do they have, each entry has a number? Which number we talk about?
3.
Number 3. Okay. Well,
and then this number 4 at the top of this one is also a 4-year degree, but it is an accredited program. So my question is, why does the accredited program and the non-accredited program have the same amount of experience? Based on the 5-year program's comparison, shouldn't the 4-year program's comparison follow that standard, that the accredited 4-year program should receive 4 years of credit and the non-accredited program should receive 3.5? Or 3, like whatever.
I don't even know. Lucky we have so many experts here. I don't even know the NAB has any accredited degree that is 4 years. Not sure.
Apologies. I thought I was unmuted. So I can explain. So in number 3, that 4-year program is specifically in architecture. This 4-year program is in architecture, but it's at a school that has an accredited program. So this is still a 4-year non-accredited degree, but it's at a school where they would go ahead and they could use that degree to enter into an accredited program. So like a 4+2 or a 4+3 program. They would be able to use this degree to get into that program. So they get in the combining, so in taking the old table, the 2 columns that were from prior to 2005 and eliminating that, they get the 3.5 years, which is what they would get now for anyone that applies with the board now. It's because the requirement has been out for about 17 years that we were looking at how few people, I mean, there are already people in the system that are actively testing that are already exempt from the requirement. By consolidating the table and eliminating the unnecessary columns, we're just focusing on those who are applying presently. Does that help?
Totally makes sense. I guess, yeah, it totally makes sense. I just didn't understand why it went from 4 to 3.5 on the accredited. When you weight the 5-year programs, even though I understand that it's not a 5-year program, but they are still at an accredited program. You've weighted it in the other category, so I didn't understand why you weighted it here.
Yeah, so the way it was weighted is it's basically 6 months less than the number of years that they went. Like the actual accredited programs get the 5 years. So an accredited program, which is up in number 1, they get the maximum credit 5 years, which is what's actually specified in the statute. And then a professional degree that is a 5-year degree program, but not accredited by NAB, that gets a maximum of 4, and that's what allows that's kind of the basis we're using for the other degrees. Okay. Did somebody have a question?
At some point, Sunny, I hope we can go back to page by page. But it looks like someone has a microphone on, has some issues here, and some level of reverberation here. So a quick introduction. I want to just the public member know as well, and our committee here. We have a dream team here, and Eric is a practitioner, but focus on education. He's the leader of the NAB accredited degree. He also has a program under his watch, non-NAB accredited degrees. And Barry has a long history of teaching at Cal Poly, and at the same time is a practicing architect. And Sunny, yourself, you teach as well, and I have been busy in for quite a few years representing NAB, visiting NAB accredited programs internationally. So this is a great time to talk about all that. I hope we get some good direction to the staff. I just have a quick comment on this particular issue that Marcus, you look like distinguished from a non-NAB degree, 4 years degree from a university has no NAB accredited degree, from a non-NAB degree from a university has a NAB accredited degree. I don't see why you need to make a distinction, because if they are not non-NAB accredited degree, that is the non-NAB accredited degree, period. I think they should be treated equal. For example.
Yeah, just a couple of examples I'm looking through. UC Berkeley has a 4-year Bachelor of Arts in Architecture, and then they have a 2 or 3 year accredited master's degree. USF, University of San Francisco, also has a 4-year Bachelor of Architecture or Bachelor of Arts in Architecture major, 4-year degree, and they do not have an accredited degree beyond that. But I'm just looking through both curricula, and in terms of content, studios, they're relatively similar. So as Ken says, there's not a lot of substantial difference. Typically, for instance, in our program, we also have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Architecture and a 5-year Bachelor of Architecture. And really the difference there with the 5th year is in the thesis year, where, for instance, in our program, they do a large, intensive, integrated design project that is their thesis. But essentially, that's the difference between the 4-year and the 5-year. So if it's a Bachelor of Arts, and oftentimes, like University of San Francisco, I don't know if they plan on having are planning on going for accreditation, in which case they will have to do a 5-year program, but that's essentially the difference, as I understand it. Cal Poly may be different.
No, Cal Poly, we just have the 5-year degree at Cal Poly right now. And we dabbled years ago with the 4-year, but we right now just only have a 5-year. Yeah.
Tian?
Yeah.
So to answer your question on that, so when these were drafted up, I believe it was in the late 90s to early aughts. The committee at that time broke it down and made these distinctions. If the committee wants to change any of that, then we can do that. We're at a point where we can do that. That's what we're hoping, is if there's any direction that the committee has that they'd like us to take the regulations. So I can take that input that you provided, and we can incorporate it into the language and bring this back. The committee at the time that they were working on these distinguished between the little subtleties to address Eric's when he was saying that the University of San Francisco, they actually reached out to us not that long ago and advised us that their program is the same as the one at Berkeley. So they do get the 3.5 years of educational experience credit that any school with a similar degree, because there's two ways of getting it. There's the first way that was mentioned in number 3, and that's where USF is getting the 3.5 years from. And then for Berkeley, because they have an accredited program and that degree, they've got the master's, they would get the 3.5 for their Bachelor of Science in Architecture. Bachelor of Arts. That one, that's how that one gets the 3.5 years. But we can definitely, if the committee wants even more simplification on that, we could definitely make those changes to the text.
Yeah, I want Marcus. I thank you for your openness. I think this is a time not necessarily go back just bonded by these categories. I think you truly have a dream team here in this committee. That's why I want this committee to work on this. And beyond this committee, we have more experts on the board, such as Mitra is a long practitioner and a professor. So this is the best 1 year or 2 years you have revisited this in also context with NCARB, the making substantial move in reviewing all 3 E's, and education is one of the key elements they look at it. And NAB themselves also is visiting. And by the way, we just introduced the condition of approval of accreditation for 2020, the new conditions. So it is optimum time to get this right and meet the modern day, context. So this is great. All conversation here will be very, very constructive, useful. I also encourage the attending publics to have your input. So just through today's meeting, staff can have very, very, well thought comments, and then have enough to work for them to work on a newer version. And I would not simply go by the existing categories and try to fix them. If needed, just forego what you have and list another one. But for today's meeting, of course, this is a referencing point. Maybe most productive way is refer to these categories.
Okay, I can do that. So going on to page 4, you'll notice that there's I'm doing the highlights that you had asked about, Tian. So on number 10, you'll see, there's number 11, and then under that was the old number 10. And the reason for that is because the numbering changed when we redid the structure on the prior page. We decided to move all the education items together. This is because candidates can go to our website, they can see this table, and we wanted to make it better organized for them, for staff, for everyone all around. So what used to be further down the table, and it was the post-professional degree in architecture, was moved up with the rest of the education items. So that's the new number 9. Afterwards, we started with training, which is number 10. On the next page, the former number 10 dealt with work that was done during a person's time in college. And John Baker had mentioned, being one of the former presidents of the board, he had mentioned that if a person works and works an hour under an architect, they should be credited as such, and that there really shouldn't be a limit. So, taking that into consideration, we struck everything related to that section so that it treats work experience under an architect the same, regardless of where or when you're working. So whether you're working while you're attending school, you're working during the summers, you would get the same experience. It's all work experience under the new number 10, which is working under an architect. So that's a significant change because in the past we limited experience to 1 year. And so the proposal is to eliminate that 1 year and allow a person to get credit for all the hours they work during the time.
Wait a minute here. So is this just the educational equivalencies, or this includes both education requirement and experience requirement?
Both. It includes educational and training or work experience. So
No, the experience is evaluated to contribute to the education requirement, or experience is considered as experience. It's 3 E's, remember, right? Education, experience, and examination. So the experience we talk about here is try to translate into some equivalencies of education. Is that the purpose?
Okay, so I think I know what you mean. So the table is looking at the equivalence for both education and training. And so that's why here it basically would say, for example, under number 11, an NCARB certificate is the equivalent of having all 8 years of experience, because the statute actually requires 8 years of educational and training experience in architectural work to receive a license. So number 11, the NCARB certificate, gives you the full experience for that. The experience in that context is just a neutral term. It's not referring to either educational or training. But the table is broken down into an educational part and a training part, or actual work experience.
I want to clarify something for everyone here. So just to remind you, just historically, in order to take the exam in California, you need 8 years of a combination of traditionally a 5-year accredited program plus 3 years of experience. And that's where the 8 years gets you. But this table allows you to arrive at those 8 years in various ways. It's a combination of the two to get to 8 years. Is that correct, Marcus?
That's spot on. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Excellent, Sunny.
I have a question. It has to deal with the accelerated path that we were looking at, and is that still valid? How does the accelerated path of combining the education experience that I think the new school has, USC has, and a couple others, how does that fall into all this?
By accelerated path, Barry, do you mean the IDP program?
Yeah, I think the IDP program, I believe, the
IPAL.
I'm sorry, not IDP.
IPAL.
That's my day. IPAL, yes.
Yeah.
So, Barry, to answer your question, IPAL is not impacted by these changes. In fact, we've taken IPAL to impact these changes. So it's actually the reverse direction. So because we know IPAL is out there, that was factored into the changes that were made that we're proposing in this particular reg section. That's why this section's partly why this section was being removed, because of the 1-year limit when someone is in school. There's another section further into the regs on about a few pages down. I'll go through it really quickly. That deals with individuals who would be enrolled. I don't know if when I scroll, you see the scrolling, or if you have.
That's the problem. And when I scroll, if you scroll, then you override my scroll. So I really think someone should drive. I think Marcus should do it. And but this form, Marcus, you already arranged the way that group all the education first, and then group the experience after the education, right? Did you already do that? You said, yeah, that's nice. And yeah, okay. Sunny, when we can walk through the whole thing, just quickly, instead of start from middle.
Yeah, and Tian, just so you know, I'm not driving this. So Marcus is driving this on his end. So we are.
Yeah,
going
I
through
was
it.
moving.
Marcus, you want to start from beginning? This table?
Beginning of the table? Sure, I can go back to that.
And then you start with your listing all the education scenario first. And after the education, you listed some of experience scenarios, right?
Correct. So each degree type and major is called out in the table. And that's just to make it easier to follow. I mean, that's how it is actually on the website. If you went to our website and looked this reg up, you would see it in a table. And so we start with the NAB accredited degree, then we have the the non-accredited degree.
Sorry, before even you go there, you have these titles all crossed out. I assume you will use latest terminology, right?
Correct. We've
no IDP, you use XP, whatever it is, okay, right?
Correct. So the column A is the experience description. So it's the type of experience, and that's the general context of the term experience. Column B and C, that text that's being repealed deals with the pre-2005 experience and how it was granted. And then column D, as you can see, we're basically just trying to make it simpler, less verbose, so that all you would see is column A, experience description, column D, which would then become B, and that would say maximum credit granted.
Okay,
so it's just to make it easier.
The new listing, the new table has no A and B, only no B and C, only
Correct.
A and B. Okay.
Correct, and I can throw that up real quick just so you could see that.
Okay.
So this is what it would look like. You would have experience credits, column A, column B. Experience description, maximum credit granted. So this is what it looks like with all the changes accepted, all the proposed changes accepted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's much nicer, cleaner. Okay.
And it makes it a lot easier for candidates, because like I mentioned earlier, candidates would see this when they go to our webpage. They can see our website rather. They can see the table under the regulations, and it just all around much cleaner interface for them, easier to understand. We have more in the way of categories than we did before, because beforehand we would have, say, 10A, 10B, 10C. We decided to streamline that and just make it 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on, just so it's easier for candidates and for even staff to follow. So going back to the marked up version, so that takes care of the structure. And then we go to a professional degree, a NAB accredited degree, 5-year program. that receives 5 years, and that's based on the statute.
Are you moving your table? I don't see any movement.
Is it moving? Can you see it scrolling? See, I can't tell whether when I scroll, whether you see that or not.
This is the moderator.
It's complicated.
Everyone will see when Marcus changes a page, but on a particular page, it will be incumbent upon you to change down yourself.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
So if we scroll down from category 1 to category 2, we're at this point in the table, what we're trying to do is essentially just streamline the table, make it much easier for candidates to, we want to remove the outdated columns. We wanted to consolidate the educational and training experience. We wanted to clarify some language. We also wanted to increase the maximum credit granted for completion of AXP. When we get to the experience, the training experience, work experience portion, that's what we wanted to be able to do.
Wait a second, Ewan. Sorry, we have educated here. Is NAB and NCARB try to use a professional degree equivalent to a NAB accredited degree? Is that such a convention, Eric? Everyone can call their degree a professional degree.
Yeah, we assume that an accredited degree is the first professional degree.
Okay, so we may not even use the term here, Marcus. We don't use, if industry concurs a professional degree equivalent to a NAB degree, we may not use that term. So the document I'm repeating myself so many times. We have all the experts here. We can make documents really great.
Yeah. We assume the non-accredited degree is the 4-year degree. The 5-year degree is the accredited degree.
So we're not supposed to call a professional degree if it's a 4-year non-credited.
But I have a question for Marcus regarding that. I make that same assumption as well, but I think what Marcus was stating earlier is that there actually are 5-year quote unquote professional degrees that are not accredited by NAB. Is that correct? That they exist
Correct.
And they are out there. So we do need to qualify these and we do need to weight them separately.
And actually further in, which I just went to that page, page 7, a professional degree program is defined in this, and the regulation defines it as a Bachelor of Architecture 5-year program, a Bachelor of Architecture for individuals with a prior degree, so like the 4+2, 4+3, and then it actually it has those as well that are listed under C and D. So that's how the term professional degree is defined in the existing, but we can do research and we can see if there's a need to change this definition. I believe that's what you're asking for, Tian. Am I correct?
Yeah. I think with all the changes, with NAB almost made revolutionary change, and NCARB, all the change in the past couple of years, it's a good time to visit its entirety of our document and make sure the terms we use are in line with industry as much as possible. I don't have any objections if the universities or schools prefer use professional degrees, but if there's a majority viewpoint or convention how the professional degree is defined, I would rather go along with a more prevalent, definition.
I will say that, again, professional degree as defined in the regulatory language, accredited by National Architectural Accrediting Board or the Canadian Architecture Certification Board. It gets a little bit into, say, NAFTA or the trade agreements, but as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, there's some agreement with Mexico as well, that they also have some kind of equivalency, in which case we have to maybe look at what their professional degree programs are like. I know there are people, say, who graduate from professional programs in England or France or Germany, who, and again, I don't know exactly how they work, but as I understand it, once they graduate from those European programs, they are considered professional architects, and there's some, guidance in terms of what their equivalency is like.
Eric, good point. Marcus, so the NCARB is working on the new called the mutual recognition program with UK. It's still in making. We don't know when will be realized. But Canada, Mexico, Australia, and New Zealand is down. We have a mutual recognition agreement. So we need, perhaps our state has to get familiar with it and see how we incorporate that information as well. So good point, Eric mentioned that, not just the Canada. However, though, the Canada may be the unique one, Eric. Looks like Canada has the equivalent NAB of Canada here. So that's why we can define differently. Other country, I don't know if we considered their programs equivalent to NAB. So that's why we have mutual recognition arrangement with other countries, another 3 countries.
And we can definitely research that, that definition. So on page 3, then we're into the 4-year degree programs. And if I understood correctly, you wanted us to look into the amount of credit that was being granted?
No, I was just why give different treatment if it's a non-NAB 4-year degree, why give preference looks like to a non-NAB 4 years degree, but resides with a university or school has other NAB degrees. I think that preference is unjust.
So you would like it to
my initial view, don't take it as a direction, but we need to look into that. I would more prefer to see if there's a 4 years degree, non-NAB, they should consider one group, right? And then the subject of degree, I think we should give evaluation. I feel strongly a non-NAB degree of Bachelor of Art or Bachelor of Science of Architecture is so different from a non-NAB degree, Bachelor of Economics and Bachelor of Foreign Policy, okay? So I think this state, California, should take courage to look into these kind of distinctions and make our education qualification more specific.
And that actually segues into the next item, which is a 4-year degree in a field related to architecture. In the past, this has been an issue because the regulation is very prescriptive in what constitutes a related field. So in discussions with legal, the way the issue is with later language in the regulation. So I was going to move to that section briefly to explain what the issue has been. So on page 7, it's listed as number 5, and it says degrees in a field related to architecture. Previously, the way it was worded is it defined those related fields very prescriptively. And what ended up happening is, for example, you'll notice that it says architectural technology as one. If it was architectural technology and regional planning. If that was the degree title, an individual could not, as the language was worded, receive any credit because there is no architectural technology and regional planning as a major. There are two separate majors, architectural technology and regional planning. And so to now correct this, we were advised by legal to suggest a set of majors by just changing it from defined as to such as. So it then takes those majors, and those are examples that we can use. So in using that other hypothetical, if we have someone with an architectural technology and regional planning degree, we could now give them credit. And that will open up the opportunities for more candidates because this particular issue, it can prevent an individual. I mean, it can hold them back because the most that we would be able to recognize through educational experience is 1 year, whereas a field related to architecture gets 2 years. So it cuts the amount of experience that they would receive credit for by half. And so that's why we're proposing this particular change to help correct for that defect in the language.
So, Marcus, if I could come in a little bit, I think this is always a huge challenge to staff. I don't know if easily we can help to define better, but modern days, the degree is so broad, anything can be a degree. And architecture practice becomes so broad, anything can claim related to architecture. I think that the dividing line is really hard. Is architecture related or not architecture related? But as hard as it is, I think it is require more expertise, the work from expert here to take a risk, make some kind of dividing line. I think that's important, that's beneficial. Otherwise, it's just hard. People are, UC Berkeley has a degree in sustainability, right? I think the Bachelor of Sustainability or something. And I don't know how this fit. Marcus, how many years give to the Bachelor of Sustainability?
So in that particular case, it would receive 1 year of educational experience because it's not among this list that's there. And I'm talking about the existing regulation.
Yeah.
It would only receive that 1 year for a 4-year degree in any major because that actually happens to be another category. A person, for example, with a music degree could get 1 year. In the case of sustainability, they would get 1 year.
No, the person from Chinese literature can get 1 year too, right?
Correct.
Yeah, see? So I have a degree in Chinese literature, and I get 1 degree. And I have UC Berkeley's Bachelor of Sustainability, but that curriculum is actually offered by School of Architecture, mostly architecture classes. So I get 1 degree 1 year as well. So just not giving you a hard time. I just think with experts' help, this is a good time to somehow review our definitions of architecture related and non-architecture related.
Okay. But you would only get 1 year. So like if an individual, if an individual has multiple degrees, they would only get 1 year. They would only get the maximum credits for the highest degree. So I believe you said if you had a bachelor in literature.
I just compared the 2 degrees. It's appear not fair. If I get a degree of Bachelor of Sustainability offered by architecture program in the NAB accredited school, for example, versus I take my degree from whatever university with the Chinese literature, and I had the same 1 year of credit. That seems not all equivalent, right? Between the two.
I can understand where you're coming from. Yes.
Yeah.
So this gets back to, I think, Marcus's point relating to such as. So could such as include something like sustainability?
I don't know. So I say along such as, yeah. But with expert help, maybe we can define it. But right now, what is for example, we have Cal Poly has this very strong architecture engineering. Is that defined anywhere?
There is architectural engineering as a related field in the existing regulation.
How many years give to him?
They would get 2 years.
Okay, not too bad. Actually, they qualify 4 years. That's my view. Very probably agreed.
If it said architectural engineering, and again, or like architectural and mechanical engineering, if that was the actual major, because of the existing regulation and how prescriptive it is, as you see it there, crossed out, those are the only majors that can receive that 2-year credit because of the way it's defined, and that's been the issue. So we could expand it by using such as, but as you pointed out, Tian, we can also redefine it through the use of educational experts on how what fields would actually be related, and that could also work.
Okay, good. We touch upon lots of things. Chair, sorry we hijacked your agenda, and now we surrender back to you.
So you wanted me to continue going through page by page?
Yes, I'd like to do that. And in fact, we're just now through 4-year programs. One of my big questions is about 2-year programs. And I see that there may be some omissions here that I'd like to ask about. But can you keep going from where we dropped off, which was, yes, at this 8-year moment, and then the experience obtained for related degree fields are 2 years, experience related. Yeah, so if we could start there and just keep going, I think we'll get to the 2-year programs.
Okay, so after mentioning the 4-year related field, then there's any other university or college degree that consists of a 4-year curriculum. So that would be the literature, or it would be music. And then we get into the community college programs, the 2-year programs, like at I'm trying to think, Consumnes River,
LA Community College.
LA Community College, Mount Sac as well. And then similar to any 4-year degree, there's any 2-year degree. So any degree or technical school certificate, they can receive 1 year. So that's somewhat similar to the other section.
Yeah, so I don't know if I can't remember in the final document if you flip these, but these it feels like 7, 8 need to be flipped so that the 2-year program goes first, and then the other one, because that would sort of follow the order of the previous items. But I guess I have a little bit of a rub with the 2-year degree that's basically meant to be a transfer degree to an accredited program, saving upwards of $50,000 for a student, and even though they might apply towards 2 years of their ultimately 5-year degree, they would lose a year here of experience based on this equivalency.
Yeah,
I can see that point.
I'd agree with that too, because I know at Cal Poly there are certain programs that we take. One's a local, one called Cuesta College, that is very much accredited, picks up the full 2 years. And when they come in, if they've gone through that, they basically go into third year at Cal Poly. But there are other community colleges that doesn't work for because they haven't gone through the same thing. So I can see that there's really two different types of community colleges. I think even if it's an architecture program, there are some that come into Cal Poly that do not meet that, and they will have to take, generally they go back and take their second year again at Cal Poly because they don't have that accreditation at their community college.
Yeah, so I can see how it's tough to split this one up. I'm assuming, just to get a point of clarification, Marcus, if a student has gone to a 2-year accredited, or not accredited, but to a 2-year community college and then transferred to a 5-year NABRA accredited professional degree program and received their degree from that program, the California Architects Board considers that degree as 5 years of experience. Is that correct?
The accredited degree, yes, correct.
Okay, so that does take care of a certain subset of people, but you could imagine that there would be students who attended that 2-year program, received that same 2 years of education as those others, but then did not go on to get a program, but because of financial reasons, and went on to work in an architecture office or an engineering office or wherever, where they received the necessary time, but would be missing that 1 year. I don't know if that's fair, but I'm just pointing it out that could happen, and happen a lot.
I see what you mean.
I'm also interested in the same group as Sunny. In fact, I know my college district, many people after AA degree in architecture, they just move on to do work for contractor or some architecture firms. How many years? You can only give them 1 year maximum. Why not 2 years? Because their degrees even name AA degrees in architecture.
I think an important thing to look at is with City College, for instance, they do have articulation agreements, transfer credit agreements with places like UC Berkeley, CCA, and others. And they've treated it such that their programs would be equivalent to the first 2 years of their own program. So it seems that if places like Berkeley and CCA are willing to say that is the same as our first 2 years, why are we changing this from 2 years to 6 months?
Well said. Yeah. Well said.
This is a tough one though. I'm like in the background, I'm searching, and I've been on the school end of 5-year NAB accreditation, but I've never been an accreditor for NAB. And as far as I know, there's no accreditation of 2-year programs as a starting place for 5-year programs. Those of you who have participated in that, is that your recollection and belief as well?
Well, other than a graduate 2-year, no, not an undergraduate.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I realize this is hard. This is a difficult one because of what Barry mentioned, that while there are several 2-year programs that are tailored and work directly with their local 5-year program, there are many that offer architecturally adjacent programming that do not. So I realize this is a tricky one.
Yeah, but Sunny, is that trying to extending your concern? Is that because their curriculum is not matches with a 5 years program degree like Cal Poly?
That would be my concern. That would be my concern. But
you don't want to give them 2 years because Cal Poly is not considered their program good for 2 years?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's hard to there's no accreditation process out there. There's no third-party accreditation process out there that the state can use to validate some of those 2-year degrees, or actually any of them. The only thing that validates them is the fact that certain schools accept them as 2 years of transfer credit, and I don't know that there's a portal or any kind of above board qualification that the state could point to as acceptable sort of evidence of that. But it's a problem. I agree with that.
Mhm.
I just don't know how to help Marcus and
So
the
let
board.
me put the spot on Barry. Barry, if your school is not satisfied with that transfer students, want him to take more classes, but that is your school's, your program's particular requirement, though. From that perspective, if you're the dean of your school, would you generally concerned that the architects board give that students 2 years of credit because he owns AA in architecture, despite your school is not taking 4 years or 2 years of credit?
I don't know. I think it kind of goes back to what Eric was saying about the fact that, we have worked with some of the community colleges and created these articulation agreements that say that the programs that they are doing are in lockstep with what we are trying to teach in those first 2 years. So I think the problem becomes of what those other schools are teaching and how does it fall within our curriculum. Now, it may very well be, and this is the real difficult part, it may very well be that the curriculum that they're working on might fall in more with Berkeley's or someone else's and then can go to that. So I think that's the difficult part, is how to judge these two together.
Yeah. So I think the staff, if I'm a staff, I'm thinking, get a hint from Cal Poly already. The matching to Cal Poly may not be great for 2 years, but it could be a very good match for UC Berkeley's 4 years degree of taking their first 2 years. So as a regulatory agency, we don't go along specifically with one schools, right? We look at a more broad implication. And so in this case, maybe we can give 2 years. I'm pretending I'm a staff, okay?
I think this is a big deal. I think we should be able to give 2 years for 2 years of community college architectural education in California. I think it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big social justice deal as well. Socioeconomic justice. This is pretty important, I think, if we have the ability to do this.
Yeah, I'd second that as well. I think that if the degree that you get out is an associate's degree that has something to do with architecture, I went to 2-year school at Pasadena. That was Associate of Arts in Architecture that got me into Cal Poly. And I think if it's along that line and has that architectural tag to it, then I would agree with that, I think, yeah.
And I think it fits what we're meant to be doing here, which is expanding opportunity. Yeah. And it's only 2 of the 8 years. There are still 6 more years that are required. And so it's a healthy start. And I think it could put a lot of people in the door that are currently shut out.
I agree.
I think we can all agree on that and we can move on. What do you think?
We made a decision, huh?
Well, I think we can come back and and talk about it at the end, right? We can talk about it in our summary. I will say that it's still bugging me a little bit that the 4-year program that's not accredited gets 3.5 years, but the 4-year program that's at an accredited program is also only getting 3.5. That still bugs me. I think they should get 4. I'll just go back and say that again.
Of course, we will change that. I will be
that
the
too.
champion. I will be the champion. Marcus, I will call you every day. And staff, can we, I just got this message from last meeting at an NCOV that one of the Nevada college was approved to offer Bachelor of Architecture degree, full Bachelor of Architecture degree, okay? Is it possible staff can track down which college? I don't have the name.
Yeah, I was in the meeting.
Thank you. That would be big too. That is really, Sunny, that can start give different perspective if you're talking about the equity and inclusion, really.
I agree. Shall we keep going, Marcus?
Sure. So on the next item is a post-professional degree, emphasis on architecture, and it could be a master of science, PhD degree. That earns 1 year of additional experience. The caveat is you have to already have a professional degree. So as previously defined, you'd have to have one of those degrees and then have your post-professional in order to receive this. Right now, it's my understanding only the University of Hawaii has a PhD program in architecture, a D-Arch. So this actually doesn't happen very often. I mean, we do have it happen, but this went from 6 months pre-2005 to 1 year, and so it's already in the regs as 1 year. But what we did is we moved it from where it was located in the table. This is the one I referenced earlier. It was further down, and we brought it up here with the section that pertains to education. And then we start into the training. So the training experience.
Sorry, before you go to, can we stay on 9? I have some remarks.
Yes, we can go back to that.
I find it seems not just that the post-degree 1 year has to based on if they have the professional degree in their bachelor's. And I can tell you, I was the victim of this requirement. And I hope you was not the first staff that evaluate my experience 3 years ago. I got my Master's of Building Science from USC's Architecture School, but it's not a professional degree. And I asked, can you at least give me some credit? And then the board gave me nothing. So just so you know, because my bachelor's degree is architecture engineering from another country. So it's not meet your definition. So my entire education from USC was not counting anything, just so you know. And how is everyone feel? Why that 1 year is in condition to you have a professional degree? What is the rationale behind? Do you know, Marcus? Do you remember? I was just making fun. It's not serious, but this question is serious. Is what is the rationale? Why offering 1 year credit for the postgraduate degree is depending on their bachelor's degree?
So the basis of this is you've already gotten the 5 years, but the situation you were talking about actually has happened. UCLA, and I'll be really brief on this. UCLA had an MArch program that everyone in Carbon S determined was a professional degree, the fully accredited NAB degree. And it turns out that it was not. It was actually a post-professional degree. So NCARB let everyone know that this was actually a post-professional degree. The individuals had foreign degrees. So they had gone to a foreign university, got their professional degree there, then came to UCLA and got that post-professional with the foreign degree. And then what they received from that would only be, so their foreign degree has to be evaluated by one of the education services. And it has to tell us which one of these categories it would fall into for the base credit.
To elaborate on that, there's 2 different kinds of degrees that they give. One was the quick 4-quarter MArch 2, and I believe that's what you're talking about. You're not talking about the MArch 1.
Correct. They changed that not that long ago because that was the confusion that had happened. the degrees were just called MArcs, and nobody at NCARB or us knew. I mean, and these went back a few years, but nobody knew that those were post-professional and not, the accredited degree. And that is exactly the scenario that can happen. So the individuals then had to have their foreign degrees evaluated. And based on that, they'll receive, the corresponding credit. So if you do have a foreign degree, a professional degree from another country, and it gets evaluated, and if it were to be evaluated as, say, a 4-year degree, in the United States, you wouldn't be able to get this 1 year necessarily unless the program that you were in is a post-professional program. But the majority of people that get this credit, they have an accredited degree. So they may have gone to Berkeley, gotten the accredited degree, and then maybe they went into another program like the D-Arch, and then received another year, or similarly, like I mentioned, if they had their foreign degree evaluated, and then they could get that 1 more year. So they could at the end of the day, they could get have as much as 6 years of experience, educational experience. That's where this degree comes in. That's why it's limited to the 1 year, is because generally speaking, the person's already gotten either 4 or 5 years of experience. So it either gives them enough to start the testing process, or it gives them a little bit more than that.
I don't know if, sorry, I don't know if is that the reasoning? I was asking why only give that 1 year to the postgraduate degree if they have such bachelor's degrees. What is the rationale behind? By the way, my case is a real case, Marcus. You get the CAB gave me 2 years from my degree from a foreign university, architecture engineering. That's very reasonable, nice. But they don't give me anything from my postgraduate degree from US. So just so you know, and from architecture school, by the way. So it is a real case, and it's good to know what is the rationale behind the 1 year of credit for the post degree is subject to what your first professional degree is. What is the rationale behind it? If not, maybe we can revisit that requirement.
I would agree with that assessment that we could definitely revisit it. The rationale, and I'm sorry if I was long-winded on that. The rationale was basically to give an individual additional experience, educational experience credit for the higher level work beyond a master's degree, the MArch, and earning, say, a Master of Architecture. So if you had, a 4-year degree in architecture, and then you got a Master's of Architecture, you could get, 4 years for that Bachelor of Arts or Science, and then get another year for the Master of Science. So I think it's just to recognize. I mean, I wasn't there at the time that they came up with that additional, but based on my research, that's what it appears to be. Just conferring extra experience for the extra work in the education.
Okay, so now you consider the experience. So now I understand. So that extra year is counting on experience, not education.
No, it's educational experience.
Okay. I need to take some time to think about it. Okay.
Marcus, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In the revised, I'm not sure we're going to get through all of them. I hope that we still can before we have to end our meeting. But is there an education max for experience? So I remember when I applied many years ago, I believe there was a max. And then, so in other words, there has to be some education and some work experience. Is that still the case? Or could you theoretically accumulate all your experience through education and receive no work experience and still qualify?
You are correct. There is a max. The max would be 5 years.
Okay.
And then this would allow this particular post-professional degree actually allows it to go to 6 years. Because the highest educational credit you can receive is 5 years. That's having the accredited degree. And so this would be on top of that. So that's what makes the max 6.
So the reason I asked this question is because I think that that's what this one extra year is rooted in. Because if you had a professional degree, like I happen to have had a 5-year degree and also got a master's degree. And so theoretically, I could have gone over 6 years with the amount of credit that I had, but I was capped probably at 6, and probably at the time I did, I was probably still capped at 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sunny,
that's
could you, now talking about another 2 categories, I hope we have time to get to it. So as a chair, could you make sure we get to that pure experience path and the foreign experience, okay?
Well, the next item, Marcus, is pure training experience is 8 years, right?
Correct. So this used to be what we called A8. It's now going to be A10, and it's work experience under the direct supervision of an architect. And that a person can get up to 8 years. It should be noted that an individual does have to complete AXP. There are very few exceptions to the AXP requirement. For example, if you've been licensed in another state for at least 3 years, you would not have to complete AXP, and you could document under this section 8 years post or pre-licensure and receive full credit for that. And so that's why if you notice, it was originally listed as 5 years, but it's actually we want to be able to allow for people who come that experience only path to have up to 8 years. And that's also the underlying rationale behind why we want to give AXP the ability to go up to 8 years as well. For those who have documented many years of experience in AXP, they would be able to submit their AXP record and it would have all of their experience in it. But that's primarily for people who are coming in through reciprocity, but it could also work for those who are just trying to complete the ARE as well.
What is the method to counting that 8 years? One-on-one?
Yes,
Total
correct.
maximum. No, I would not agree. I would not agree. Sorry to say. You are the intent of 8 years is a combination of 2 E's, right? Education and experience, is it? So the education is one of the principal element, yes? So that's why you have 5 year, 4 years, 3.5 year, 2 year, 1 year educational equivalent plus experience. So I'm not sure it is fair to say that anyone can just engage in architectural practice, and for every minute you're working in that firm, it's equivalent to the degree hours you need to spend in these schools. I don't think this is a one-on-one translation. I just don't feel so. Any other different views?
Yeah, I'll speak up. I think that Marcus, hasn't it always been? I know California is one of the rare states, but hasn't it always been that if you have 8 years of experience, you are eligible to receive your license upon, all the exams, etc.?
That is correct. It's what we call the apprenticeship path.
Okay. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of our past presidents, John Baker, I think, went through that process. And so I'm not certain as being an educator, I certainly believe in the education process, but I don't know if, we should all of a sudden be adding more years onto it if you only do the work, if you're only doing it through the training and experience. Again, part of that has to do with the people who can't afford to go to the universities and colleges. And so I think that, and that's part of my justification for allowing that, I would say.
Marcus, can you give us some clarification? Maybe this particular table is misleading in that it's maybe looking like a change that is not actually happening. I mean, is this a semantics or graphic representation? What's the change that's actually happening here to the apprentice program?
We're letting it go up to 8 years from the read of it. Yeah.
And so in the past, if you apprenticed for 5 years, how did you receive your additional 3 years of credit to test?
So that was through the AXP program. So what we're allowing for here is, because this column is post the AXP requirement. So in this particular column, it would allow up to 5 years. So now we want it to be up to 8 years.
Okay, so this is getting to where I'm going. So in this old system, you could get 1 year in column B, 5 years in column D. That gets me to 6 years. Where did the additional 2 years come from to test?
That I don't have an answer on this. And
I think that's where the disconnect is happening here. So if we could get some information on that, I think it would be helpful.
yes, I will definitely.
It's always been my understanding as well that you could apprentice your way to test and become an architect in California, and I'm not understanding how by looking at this table.
Yes, I will definitely look into that.
Thank you. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tian.
I'm so glad that had a view from Barry and the committees. I want to share with you where my thought process based on is. For years, I volunteered for NCARB to establish educational experience-based qualifications for NCARB certificates. And the work is largely, I spent more than 1,000 hours to evaluate each applicant candidate of how their experience that has covered the objectives of education of an architecture degree in multiple fronts. We call the NAB requirement. And with a comprehensive experience, you actually see them through their project, their practice, and their education during their practice, taking seminars. They can document that these project experience actually reflective of the learning intent if they were registered in a school or an architecture school. So that relationship is more scientific to me and measurable because we break down the education objectives and we match with their experience, their educational experience learning from their practice. So, and that has been years, evolved from what we call the broadly experienced architect and broadly experienced foreign architect, now called certificate alternative review committees. So all that effort is recognized to be an architect. Education is an element. However, that element not necessarily can be only accomplished by attending a university. You can achieve these educational goals through different forms, including work for a licensed architect. So that is the distinction here. We have not addressed that education element if we simply said every practicing year is a year of 8 years of credit. if we can do that, but even that, we need to qualify of that experience. For example, that experience should cover certain, subject matters during that 8 years, right? That there's 5, 6 major learning practice objectives, and the candidate should document that. And so, I'm not necessarily interested in create a formula how many years of practice equivalent to 1 year of education, because it's harder to establish that, but to not ask for qualifiers about their practice and simply draw that one-on-one equivalency seems lack of consistency that is measured to other architects. That's my concern.
Yeah, I would second that. In that, if you sort of imagine someone who had no formal academic training at all, which is fine, but if they do that and they wind up, say, working for some architect, how do we know that that person is actually gaining relevant architectural experience? Maybe the architect hired that person just to answer the phone or to do marketing or something else. And the nice thing about NCARB is that it gives you, and this would be my second point, a certain number of mandated hours in certain fields. And one of the issues, I think, with just say years, there's an assumption that a year equals 40 hours of work times 50. I don't know if it's 50 or 52 weeks. Maybe we should clarify that. So that's really more a matter of hours rather than number of years. What if someone works part-time versus full-time? What if they work 20 hours a week versus 30 hours a week? But given that, we don't know if they say, here's my 8 years of experience, exactly what those 8 years consisted of.
And give an anecdotal example. Architects to protect public well-being, health, and safety requires fundamental understanding of how structure works. For example, if your 8 years of experience is strictly on the architect who work for a pure interior design firm, and I think your exposure to the structure concept is very limited, if at all. And from consumers' protections perspective, do we feel comfortable? This is among the architects that we have admitted. Of course, there has a testing element of it. I recognize that.
Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, I have to agree with all that. I think in my comments, I was just assuming that we were going on with the idea that you had to keep a record as to the type of work that you were doing. I know there's a period of time where you had to get kind of a review from outside architects to look at the work you were doing in the office. And I really agreed with that process. Having been, fifth year instructor for many years, a lot of my past students would come to me to show me what they're doing. And oftentimes, yes, they were spending all their hours on model making or all their hours on some, narrow perspective in the field. And you'd have to tell them, no, you have to move and, talk to your principal architect and, tell them you need to have other experience in other places. So I think my comment has more about agreeing with what both you and Eric are saying, Tian, that there needs to be evaluations. There needs to be some sort of look at what are the fields that they're looking at, and that, they're not sitting there running. Well, I don't think we run blueprints anymore, but, answering phones or whatever. So I agree with that. I think there has to be some format that we can justify that they're getting a well-rounded experience in education in the practice. I agree.
I still fill out those forms, so I know that that's still in process. I have employees and the other architects that work with me, and it's our duty to check those and to check their experience and to make sure that it matches NCARB's requirements, and conversely the state of California's requirements for the experience level. So I understand this is a tough one, but I'd still, for me, the missing piece of understanding for me is because I sort of came to this understanding and believing that California was one of the few places that did allow apprenticeship, and so I'm just a little bit lost in the in our chart and how one would actually do that. So I'm assuming at some point we'll get that information. Let's keep going. Marcus, you still with us?
I'm still with you. Sorry, I was on mute again.
That's okay. Let's see, we were on the, the page before. That's right. So the 8 years of experience with the IAP. Okay.
And so, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So this is with the AXP. What we've done here is made it more generic, though, to refer to it as an architectural experience program. And that's significant in that what it does is if NCARB should change the name of the program, it doesn't affect the regulation. The regulation doesn't have to be edited, revised. It just covers an architectural experience program that's administered by NCARB. And then, of course, Canada has their own program. So we want to allow up to 8 years maximum, same justification that I mentioned earlier. And we already do for an NCARB certificate. So it's just putting them all on the level playing field there. And then we go into experience in the various categories, contractors experience. We have general contractor. We have experience under civil or structural engineers, licensed landscape architects. And then we move into certified building officials. And then we go into experience as an architect for individuals. So this would play a part if an individual happens to be licensed in another jurisdiction. And then looking at the screen, this is where we took the post-professional degree from, because it was further down in this area. And then there's teaching and research at a NAB accredited or a Canadian accredited school.
Can I stop you on this one for a second?
Sure.
If someone was in a a post program, and they were already receiving a year for what could be a multi-year program, but as part of that, they were separately teaching at that program, would that give them an additional year here?
If they were teaching and they were,
usually that's what you do when you get a PhD, right? It's part of the program. So I'm just wondering if there's a redundancy here.
I haven't encountered that circumstance. I'd have to look into it, but there's nothing that I see here that would necessarily
keep you from getting 7 years.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Prohibit that.
Okay, let's keep going.
So then after that, there's experience under supervision of a foreign licensed architect. And that's at 50%, but that's in a qualifying foreign country. And what we're seeking to do is to eliminate the term qualifying foreign country because of the fact that the publication is no longer available that was used as the basis for that. And so that's why that's struck out here. And that also in the next item, that would allow up to a maximum of 7 years. However, we are asking that the committee consider whether it wants to eliminate the concept of a qualifying foreign country and limit how much experience can be received from work either as a foreign architect or under a foreign architect.
So just so I'm clear and understand this, if an architect from a foreign country moves here and they had 14 years of being a practicing architect in either one of these categories, they would receive up to, or let's say 16 years of practicing, they would receive 7 years in both of these categories.
They have to have at least 1 year under a U.S. architect. So with 14 years at 50%, they would have the maximum, which is 7 years.
Okay. Yeah, I just worry, like, oh my God, how on earth do you guys, like, who's qualifying what country? And is that becoming, it seems so subjective, and should we just say all countries? Like, I mean, shouldn't it be clear, regardless of the country, to the staff if they were practicing architecture outside the United States? I just wonder how on earth you would, without some third-party document, like, it seems like you'd just be getting into a lot of trouble there without just accepting all of them.
Can we looks like this category can require staff can do more work with national level of NCARB and NAV. Maybe instead of California produce our own. I don't think it's a huge challenge for us that the resource from foreign architect may not have a detrimental impact to protect our consumers. I don't know if we want to have California unique specific sets of rules regarding foreign architects.
Yeah, we
Since
could.
NCARB is well defined everything already.
We could certainly do that. I'm just, for me, I'm just looking at the fact that it's 50%. So you're talking about people who could very well have been educated and had twice the amount of experience as the people that we're dealing with, and you could be sort of discounting them based on, I don't know. We'd have to just make sure that that was thoroughly done. That sort of thing kind of worries me personally, but that would be my own concern. But 100%, we can ask staff to do that.
I mean, eliminating qualifying meet your suggestion, is it, Sunny?
Yeah, it does. That's why I'm saying I think it's okay like it is.
I still think you should have qualifying. For example, a country invade another country, maybe not qualify. I'm joking again, not suitable for public meeting.
No, it's actually quite serious. But wouldn't other federal I don't know. Yeah, it is tricky. It's outside my expertise, this one. It seems complicated, and I guess the reason I'm concerned about this is because I'm sure we have a lot of applications from outside of our country coming in. So this seems like an important, difficult but important one. We're running out of time. Is there one more sheet we can do quickly before we adjourn?
Honey, it's more. I think you kind of finished the table here, so that might be a good spot to stop, because staff's going to have to bring this back, I think, to the next meeting with some additional research.
Yeah.
But it's up to you.
Yeah, let's finish the next table just because we're there. If you guys don't mind another 5 minutes. And I feel like that'll be a thorough thing, and then we'll sort of, I think Tien's got some good notes, and we can sort of briefly run through that and figure out what the next steps are.
Sunny, this actually is the only table.
Oh, so great. We're at the last page. This is the bottom.
Well, the rest is all other explanatory text and clarification text.
Yeah,
and
but we're at the bottom of the table.
Right, we're actually at the bottom of the table. So with the input that we've received, we can do the research and then bring this back to the committee, because the changes we may make to this table when we bring it back to the committee could affect other changes further down based on the input. I did want to, however, make sure I completely understood when it comes to the qualifying foreign country. Is it the desire of the committee that we want to continue having a listing for the qualifying foreign countries, or expand it to just any foreign country? And is the committee looking for a limit, or unlimited experience, say for the 7-year cap, because there has to be a minimum of 1 year?
Marcos, I prefer actually pending this current exercise on B19 and taking general message from NCARB and ESA and this organization and come back with your new version. Can I ask that? Chair, could you let me request that?
Sure.
Done. I'll go ahead and do that.
So just a few notes to follow up from me. Sticking points for me were the accreditation of the 4-year program, 3.5 years of the accredited program to the other. The degrees to expand, so the 2-year community college degrees, feels like there's an opportunity there to do the right thing and increase the experience given. Tian mentioned that we'd like some feedback on the 8-year apprenticeship experience and how one does that in the system currently, and it would just be nice to enumerate that more clearly so that everyone understands and agrees. And then for Laura, the clarification, and then also this foreign country issue, I think is it's complicated, but not at the same time. I just feel like if someone was able to enter this country, there's reasons why they were able to enter the country, and they should be allowed to participate. So that's just how I personally feel.
Sorry, that does not need required residentship. The foreign country, they can reside in their foreign country. That's the issue.
Well, maybe that's a qualifier then.
Yeah, sorry. Go back to your closing remark.
That's a very good point, because I certainly wasn't thinking about that in my logic. So Laura, there's nothing that we talked about today. So does this keep us from presenting this to the May board meeting? Do we have to have another committee meeting, or could we work on this and still present it to the May board meeting?
This one we weren't planning to send to the May meeting because I think it was going to take more time. So we're not on the same schedule we are for the zero net carbon one. So it's fine if staff needs to work on it more and bring it back to another committee meeting if that's what the committee would like to do.
Okay, I'm okay with either. So Tian, would you like to bring it back to committee?
I would think so. Quite a few major items. I want to make sure the committee feel comfortable before presenting to the full board.
Let's do that. And I'm assuming that'll be scheduled sometime this summer, right? Or in the fall?
We can do immediate. Marcus, if we work together, do you think we can have a finding for September meeting? I think we can.
We can definitely try for that.
Okay.
It looks like we could do that. Yeah.
So another PQC before September, if you can, Sunny.
Sounds great. I'm unfortunately realizing we have to open up for public comment. So at this time, I'd like to move that we open up for public comment before we adjourn.
We are now open for public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. Let's take just a moment now to see if we receive request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, please. I think we're in the clear. Okay, I just want to take a moment to thank everybody. Barry, thank you so much. Eric, thank you so much. Tian, thanks for keeping me straight. David, Colleen, thank you guys. Jesse, Bryce, Marcus, oh my God. I don't know how you do all that. And Laura, you're awesome. So thank you guys. And
Can you thank our attending publics as well and their comments?
yes, absolutely, 100%. Thanks to the public comments. They were so helpful. Mark, Christian, as always. See if I can remember some of their names. Glenn. I can't remember everyone else's.
We're just so you know, we have our AIA this year's president join us almost for the full duration.
Oh wow, that must have been painful, but thank you for sticking it out. I'm sorry I got off to a slow start. These things make me nervous. This is only my second one. As you can tell, I'm quite passionate about the subject, and I stumble until I get going. So thanks for putting up with me, and it was great to see you guys. And unless anyone has anything else to say, I'll adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you again. See you next time.
Bye everyone.
Bye.